We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life, finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases. Each week we pick a movie off of IMDb's top 250 and dig into it. We're examining truth claims in critically acclaimed movies while also examining our own biases. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this week,
Gone with the Wind.
This episode is brought to you by our community on Patreon that make this show happen, and you can help. Links to our Patreon and merchandise are in the show notes. Now back to the show.
Happy Valentine's Day, Nelson.
Happy Valentine's Day, Jeff.
I'm glad to be here with you.
And happy Valentine's Day to the wife.
The wife. My wife.
Hi, wife.
Not, to clarify, agreed you as wife, but not my wife. Jen, welcome to the show.
I'm only married to one of you.
Fair enough.
And it's me.
Yeah. My wife is not here.
That's right.
We're still married.
That's right.
Marriage is great.
Mm-hmm.
Full transparency, podcasting freaked her out.
Yeah.
She was okay with me being transparent with her rather than just saying she was sick and she couldn't make it. Being on air and something like this was not her forte.
I was going to lie to cover for her.
Right, and I appreciate that. But she was okay with being a little transparent. I have notes from her. We watched this movie together, but just it's out of her comfort zone to do something like this, some sort of broadcasting type of. In theory, she was on board because we talked about in previous episodes how we were all going to be together. As we got closer to planning for this episode, it freaked her out.
To be fair, we do have a huge audience.
Yeah, all 10 of our listeners are tough.
She speaks to
There's dozens of us.
And most of them have been in our house.
Exactly.
But
she speaks to more people on a daily basis for work.
Correct.
And they're much more likely to be unruly and critical.
Right. It's not so much, and she has notes and stuff, but just in general, she maybe one day in the future she'll be on.
And I'm going to be fully transparent too. I'm kind of nervous. I'm afraid.
My first time on a podcast was with The Things We Say. And Nate Ward asked me to say something about myself. And because I panicked, because I'd never been in front of a mic before, I said, I'm a social media whore. He's like, what's that mean? And I was like, And then after the recording, like, is there anything you want us to cut? And I had forgotten that I'd said that. I was like, yeah, everything was golden. And then I listened back to the episode after they published it. I'm like, I said that?
But I'm Jen. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Happy Valentine's Day to you too. It's exciting to be here. We are discussing Gone with the Wind.
Break Like the Wind.
Break Like the Wind.
Is that going to be the name of the episode?
No, that's the name of a Spinal Tap record.
I think this episode could just be called Break
Is this a
Wind.
Spinal Tap on the top 250?
No.
It's too bad.
I've actually never seen that movie. We should
Maybe off 250.
Off 250. And let people make that connection on their own.
Went with the weather. Maybe, I don't know. We can come up with titles later. But how are you guys doing? Before we get into we do the deep dive with you, Jen, and you do your little interview here. Like, how are you guys doing? How's life at the Hicks?
Is this like secret
marriage
counseling?
Hold on, let me get my notebook. So how are you guys doing? How's the Hicks household? How's your guys' early Valentine's Day doing?
Well,
do you guys celebrate Valentine's Day?
Not really.
No, and the reason is because our youngest was born on Valentine's Day, so that trumps.
Oh, so you're a Trump fan? Okay.
No.
No new wars.
No, our youngest was born on the 14th of February. What better way of celebrating each other's love than by spawning a new
spice?
I love the Halo reference. That was great.
It's more Minecraft, really.
I guess Minecraft.
Kids are obsessed with Minecraft.
Yeah.
Right
it's a little more relevant than
sequel to Mein Kampf, Minecraft.
Oh.
Yeah. Nelson says that joke every day at the house, and
I bet you it hits well with all your German friends. Lindsay and I, we both acknowledge that it's a holiday that's made to sell things, but at the same time,
it's not as bad as Sweetness Day.
Sweetest Day.
Sweetest
Day.
Grandest Parents
Whatever
Day.
It is. The Northeast Ohio exclusive.
Yeah. It's
half Valentine's
We don't
Day.
celebrate Sweetest Day. We acknowledge Valentine's Day because, I appreciate the intentionality.
Not Northeast Ohio, can we explain what Sweetest Day is? It's something I had to learn about when I moved here.
Yeah, it's
I mean, outside of just it being another day for celebrating your significant other, is there more to it?
It was literally invented by a chocolate
Hallmark
company in Cleveland.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I like the idea of the intended idea of Valentine's Day. Like, hey, celebrate your loved one, be intentional. I like that, but for our household, it's not one of the holidays we put at the forefront.
Isn't Valentine's Day in reference to Saint Valentine?
That's right. Mm-hmm. Who was marrying people in secret because it was illegal for him to do so. And in that way, kind of a hero.
Yeah. He should be knighted or sainted.
It's like the Ross Ulbricht of marriage.
He was sainted.
Yeah.
Good for him.
In Spanish, it's the day of Saint Valentine. It's not just Valentine's Day.
Now, there was a Valentine's Day massacre that we've talked about recently.
That's right. We talked about that
A couple times.
Day massacre. Is that Al Capone and his guys?
I'm looking it up.
I know a couple weeks ago we talked about the Christmas Day massacre, which was inspired the book LA Confidential.
St. Valentine's Day massacre was the murder of 7 members of and associates of Chicago's North Side gang. What up, North Side? That occurred on St. Valentine's Day, 1929, 10 years before this movie came out. Which this movie's unrelated to Valentine's Day, but
I believe that moment is in the movie, the Elliot Ness movie that Kevin Costner did, and then that scene is actually spoofed in Naked Gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great.
The men were gathered at Lincoln Park, not the concert, the park.
Or the band.
Garage on the morning of February 14th, 1929. They were lined up, all shot. The murders resulted from the competition of control organized by Prohibition, largely Irish. Al Capone.
Knew it.
Yeah, Al Capone. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, happy St. Valentine's Day Massacre Day.
Never would have happened if it hadn't been for the Prohibition, because that was the whole incentive.
It's not true.
Yes.
It's not true.
So you were just mumble reading.
Yeah, but I mean, don't blame it on alcohol. Alcohol's a blessing.
No, I'm not blaming it on alcohol. I'm blaming it on government intervention in alcohol.
I know.
I know.
That's right. Government, you screwed up.
Yeah,
Screwed
screwed up government.
Yeah. You're the reason for Al Capone. But yeah.
Al Capone, alcohol.
Mm-hmm. And then next month, we celebrate, St. Paddy's Day.
Yeah.
St. O'Paddy's Day.
Where we celebrate that St. Patrick drove all the snakes out of Ireland.
But he himself was not Irish.
No, he was not.
He was not Irish.
No. St. Patrick was the one that brought the locals of Ireland, the Irish, he explained to them the Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
I think you're thinking of the Matrix. Wasn't Trinity in Matrix?
Oh, man.
That's just a character.
That would be a really hilarious way for us to segue into our Matrix movie, is if we did St. Patrick's Day.
Interestingly enough, our middle child was due on St. Patrick's Day and came early, but we named him Patrick anyway.
It's actually not related to when he was born.
Because you guys are both Irish.
I am a little bit. No, but we named him after my best friend from high school who died shortly after high school. Also named Patrick.
Oh, okay.
Also born very close to St. Patrick's Day. Also not named after St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. And we had decided to name our firstborn son Patrick before we found out that I was pregnant and due on St. Patrick's Day with our firstborn son.
I'm not making this up. My parents were originally going to call me Patrick.
You look like a Patrick. I've always said that.
And the real story is, I have 3 older sisters, and
all of them named Patrick.
This is legit. This is legitimate. This is the way my mom thinks. That's why I am definitely my mom's like weird one and the same. I have 3 older sisters, and their initials are HEL. And my mom's like, it'd be fun if we had 4 children, which I was going to be the 4th, and their initials spelled help, and so that name was going to be Patrick. But then they watched a Bill Cosby sketch, which I think I've talked about this before. There's a character named, Bill Cosby was talking about a kid named Jeffrey, and I was like, oh, Jeffrey. But my name was almost going to be Patrick. So now it's Helge.
Yeah.
I was thinking they should have called me Leroy, and then their 4 kids spell hell. HEL.
And then I have a 5th kid named Oscar.
Hello.
Oh, Heidi. Oh, Heidi.
Oh, Heidi.
Yeah.
Strong Irish name.
Oh, Heidi. Yeah. So, yeah, my name was going to be Patrick. That was I think that was like the second contending name for me. I'm glad Jeff won.
So you're the youngest?
No.
4th youngest. Heidi's younger than me.
Okay.
2nd youngest.
Yeah. Between the 5 of us kids. Oh, yeah. I'm the 4th oldest. Between the 5 of us, there's 14 years gap. So.
Well,
Jen's oldest sister is older than my mother.
There's 14 years between. You ruined it because so I have a half sister who's way older.
Which
than
half?
Me. Only on my dad's side.
That checks out.
And then I have my oldest full sister is 14 years older than me. There's just 3 of us though.
That is fascinating. Well, Jen,
you sure seemed fascinated by that.
I'm going to dwell on that for a while. We got a couple questions we always like to ask our guests, and because today is Valentine's Day, we're going to celebrate our loved ones.
It's not.
Here,
it's the 31st of January.
The sad thing is, Lindsay will probably never listen to this episode.
Does she really love you?
She's dead.
She's dead.
No, she's alive.
If she dies between now
Man, we have to air the episode.
You're probably going to react a little bit like Rhett did.
Frankly, I don't give a damn.
Frankly. Ah.
No.
We have questions we ask our guests every week that we have a guest. And it's just a way for us to get to know some of your biases or your perspectives on things that come up a lot in our conversation. So the first one is, what's your political bias? Or how would you describe yourself politically?
Well, I think that it has, for the most part, I've tried to stay away from trying to define my political stances. However, we had a situation at the beginning of the pandemic that really changed my mind a lot. We have 3 children, and Nelson was staying home from work. And at that time, Nelson was doing a customer service job that required him to answer the phone, which meant I had to really control the kids because the computer was like in the living room, and that's where we all were. And so we needed to go get groceries. And at that time, it was like all children are super carriers, but no one has any symptoms. So don't take your kids anywhere or let them touch anything. And I don't know if you've ever tried to tell a child not to touch something, but it doesn't work. So Nelson and I really discussed it, and we decided that the best thing to do was for me to take the older 2 while the youngest one was napping, put a podcast or a story that they really liked, and let them stay in the car until I finished doing grocery shopping. And when I came out of the grocery store, there were police officers waiting for me because I had left my children unattended in the vehicle. And one of them was really angry, and the other one was more understanding, but they told me that they were going to have to report it to CPS. And so I had a very stressful month dealing with CPS. And I was upset because I didn't know that was a thing. And instead of somebody trying to kindly explain it to me, I was just shoved toward the police, and they were very judgmental. And it just made me realize, up to that point, my way of thinking had been, you don't need to fear the authorities unless you're doing something wrong. And then I realized that line of what wrong might be can change against you in an instant. And prior to that, we had been talking about putting a privacy fence or a perimeter fence in our yard. Yeah. And I was like, a 4-foot perimeter fence is enough because our children, we just need to make sure that our children don't go on the road. Right. And after that, I was like, can we make it 8 feet? And can there be barbed wire? I don't want anyone seeing what I'm doing because I felt like super judged. And it was like, I didn't have the freedom to be the parent that I wanted to be.
But Jennifer, the only reason you need privacy is if you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I believe that question was on the compass question, the political compass question I took, or something like that. But no, like Lindsay and I were talking about this earlier, sort of the same thing, like how like regulations have restricted something. Like no, it's like we've talked about regulations a lot. Like
I don't believe it's ever come up.
Like there are some things that genuinely are regulated because their genuine goal is to have safety in mind.
Right.
But in general, like Lindsay was talking about how like she grew up with her 2 siblings and stuff. They went to the beach every year, and back then they just had this big like 70s style van that had the curtains in the windows and stuff, and they would just put a mattress in the back, and then just the kids would just hang out on this mattress and lay down and watch movies on their way to the beach every year. And I was like, yeah, you'd get arrested for that. Like,
only because
right, like because it's not a camper,
right?
Like if they got pulled over and kids were not fastened in,
and yet
they'd get cited. Like I was like I traveled like that as a kid too. Like I used to sit on my parents' lap driving to church.
Listen, you will be in trouble with CPS if you are considered truant. If they deduce that you are not adequately providing an education for your children. They'll also hassle you if you're found not adequately fastening your children to a vehicle. However, if you send your kids to a public school and they ride a school bus where there are no seatbelts, totally fine, no one's responsible. It's like the idea that any of these regulations actually exist in a consistent manner for our own good, it's laughable when you stop to like look at how it actually plays out.
After that situation, is when we really started like digging into what kind of education we wanted our children to have. And I had a private school education in Guatemala, which is very different to the kind of education people get in public schools here.
Right.
And I didn't want my kids to go through that. Initially, I wanted to be very involved. And I realized that the only way that I can be the most involved is to do it myself, basically. So we decided to homeschool. And really, if you want to homeschool, you need to be prepared for truancy officers to come to your door at any minute, right? Because if anybody decides that your paperwork isn't good enough, then you're truant. So it's also something that's on the back of my mind is when is my decision to do what I want with my children going to not be sufficient for the government? And so now I'm leaning more towards being as radical as Nelson. However, I don't think I've gotten quite there yet.
Okay. Yeah, that would answer that question. What's your religious bias? What do you, when it comes to faith, just how would you describe yourself in any of those categories?
I was raised Protestant. Maybe this is something that needs to be inserted here somewhere. I'm Latin American. I was born and raised in Guatemala.
You can tell by her pale complexion.
Yeah, and my accent. If you listen to the way I speak, there are certain things that are just a little off. But it's now that I've lived in the States for almost 10 years, it's more in the background. But I grew up in a Protestant home in a Latin American country, which is kind of countercultural because most Latin Americans are Catholic. And we went to an American church. And it's a non-denominational church. And so I never put a great importance to denominations. And now I think I would like to be able to describe myself as a follower of Christ. Wherever that puts me on that spectrum, that's where I am. I like to follow what the word has to say, and I try not to let what other people think the word is saying define what I think the word is saying.
So your reason for or your parents' reason for being Guatemala, was it mission work or was...
My mom is Guatemalan.
Your mom is Guatemalan,
yeah.
Okay.
My dad went to Guatemala in the 50s to coach the national swimming team, and my mom was on the national swimming team. It's
That's
a little
incredible.
bit of a scandalous story. He's 10 years older than her, and they got married when she was 19.
The gap in Gone with the Wind is much bigger, so you're all right.
No.
Between Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, yeah, that age gap is way bigger.
How old is Rhett Butler?
Don't ask me. Wait. Let's finish these questions. We'll get into that.
All right.
Like, it was.
I don't know if that's true or not, but my mom's parents were very against my parents' marriage. But it was also the 60s and 70s, and it was very in to be rebellious. And so my mom was being very rebellious. And so my dad ended up living in Guatemala for the last 50 years of his life, more or less. So for whatever that's worth, he lived more of his life in Guatemala than not in Guatemala. But he was my dad, for my entire life, just looked like Santa Claus. Yeah, big white beard, big old guy, taller than everyone else. And
reindeer.
But
yeah.
Big bag of toys.
Now, Guatemala, I'm going to sound really ignorant right now.
Yeah, do it.
South America.
No,
Guatemala is...
It is South America by American reckoning.
It's in Central America.
It's Central America. Okay. Yeah.
Politically, like if you see a political map, that's technically North America.
Okay. Guatemala is Central America. It's just south of Mexico, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Were you coastal or were you inland? Or
so Guatemala is a very small country. Okay. So like if you would consider anything within 2 hours of the coast coastal, then I'm coastal. Okay, right. But in Guatemalan standards, I'm very center of the country.
Okay. The way you were describing your dad, like I just always pictured like Santa, white beard, but like with like a beach shirt on, chest hair sticking out, and just kind of like lounging back on a beach chair.
My dad did wear only button-up shirts.
I love it,
but they were never buttoned down enough to see his chest hair.
That's not true. They were buttoned down enough to see his chest hair all the time when we lived there.
I'm into that.
All the time.
I mean, you saw my dad in like the last 5 years of his life, though.
Yeah.
So,
and in those 5 years, I saw a lot of his chest hair and a lot of his underwear.
Were you required to be on swim team as a kid?
No, actually. So my parents, so Guatemala had a civil war, and it went from the 60s to the 90s. Okay, so very long civil war.
Didn't end not that long ago.
No.
In retrospect.
At the beginning of the 80s, my parents decided to leave Guatemala. And so my dad at that point had a swimming club that was like, he was like teaching all the like highfalutin fancy kids how to swim. But
read white.
But kidnappings were very common. And so all highfalutin fancy people were hiding out.
Once again,
basically.
white.
Yeah. So they stopped sending their kids to the swimming club and stuff like that. And my dad's family convinced my family to move back to the United States. All of this happened before I was born. Okay. And so they lived in the United States for 5 years in the middle of the 80s. And they moved back to Guatemala 2 months before I was born.
Okay. Was that intentional? Like, did they want you to be born in Guatemala?
So,
if you don't mind me asking.
I don't know if it was because I was coming. I think that was something that they were like working toward. So they like left everything in Guatemala. My mom had a thriving bakery. My dad had his swimming club, and they kind of sold everything and moved to the United States with like, they used their entire life savings to move to the United States. And then my dad couldn't get a swimming job, like a swimming coaching job, which was like a huge blow to his ego.
Right.
And he ended up having to work like 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet. And my mom also had to work several part-time jobs to make ends meet. And it was like going from a thriving social circle, a place where they were like
Comfortably
middle class,
Yeah.
and then suddenly going to the States. They were living in my dad's family's vacation home for a while, and then they decided that it wasn't worth it, and they moved back to Guatemala.
Gotcha.
And it coincided with when I was.
Your arrival.
It also happened to coincide with Richard quitting alcohol. I think that's the actual reason he moved back to Guatemala.
I think that the quitting alcohol happened early '90s. Actually, it was a conversation we were having with my sisters and my mom.
The way he tells it, or told it, the way he would tell it is he found out that they were pregnant with you, and he never drank again.
It
I know that that's not the truth. That's the way he remembered it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that. And normally we just have one more question for you, but I got a question for the both of you since you guys are significant to each other. But third question here. What's your favorite movie? How would you describe yourself, Jen, when it comes to
I was really expecting the other question first.
I'd forgotten that we hadn't done that question.
Oh.
So
Yeah. No,
I thought that was a bit.
Well, I said I had no.
I know, but I thought that was a bit where an important question because it's both of you. What kind of movies
Well, I
do you
said
like?
before I said normally we have three questions. Okay.
I should listen more when my co-host speaks.
It's all right.
How would you describe yourself when it comes to movies? So do you have a favorite director? Is there a favorite genre you like? Or would you consider yourself a person that enjoys many films?
I do enjoy films. I definitely started enjoying films a lot more once I married Nelson. And then it suddenly became important to know who was in what movie, who directed what movie, and kind of start making those connections.
Mm-hmm.
I was 100% obsessed with the movie Newsies as a teenager.
Yes, the musical.
In fact, my sisters like to joke. They tease me a lot because I listened to the soundtrack so often that they went through that cycle of like enjoying the songs and then absolutely hating them and then absolutely loving them again and then hating them again. Like 5 times they went through that cycle because that's how often I would listen to it. I also wrote a lot of Newsies fan fiction.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm not terribly proud of the fan fiction I wrote. But
I'll add this because Lindsay's not here and I don't think she cares. Like she was big into the Kylo Ren story. Not the love story between Kylo and Rey. Like she was not a fan of that. She didn't want that. But she did, and it's the only fan fiction she ever read. She did read a Kylo Ren fan fiction because she wanted the story to go
I bet
differently
she's
than
read
the
some
movies
Harry
played
Potter
out.
fan fiction too.
She's not.
Did she read The Cursed Child or whatever that was?
That's not fan fiction.
Yeah, it is. That was not written by J.K.
No,
Rowling.
but that was blessed by J.K. Rowling.
Sure,
So
but
it's
it
still
wasn't
fan fiction.
written by J.K.
Did
Rowling.
you
It was a
like,
fan that
fan
wrote a
fiction-
story.
50 Shades of Grey.
Hold on, fan fiction's usually labeled as something that's like unpublished.
It
like,
is-
like
Did
for it
she
to be
read
The
50
first time
Shades
that I
of
heard
Grey?
about that book,
Okay,
I
hold on,
heard
there
it
are two of you
fan
talking.
fiction.
Hold on, I can't. This is going to be like one at a time.
the first time I heard that book described, I heard it described as published Harry Potter fan fiction.
Okay, no, it is not that. But J.K. Rowling put her
I've
blessing
read
on it. Yeah, all right, and it's not wrote just by someone who sits on a couch writing like, oh, I wish it would have. Like it was wrote by.
Do you think that?
Ask me. Go ahead. Not everyone like fan fiction is something that it's people don't get paid for fan fiction for the most part.
No, but
It's
like,
underground stuff.
If you,
Like you have to find it. And a lot of it's mostly
are-
it's just sex.
there are websites
There's a lot of smut
dedicated
fan fiction,
to.
you're right.
Sure, absolutely, there is. But there are websites dedicated to publishing people who write fan fiction,
Right.
and those people get paid for that.
Right.
Shall we go?
Specifically,
shall we
Harry
provide-
Potter and the
Shall we
Cursed Child.
provide the Merriam-Webster definition?
Sure.
Stories involving popular fictional characters that are written by fans and often posted on the internet.
So the Cursed Child is not fan fiction.
I think it is.
It qualifies.
I think it qualifies
under
as
the
fan
definition.
fiction. Do you think
Wait, read that definition again.
stories involving popular fictional characters
Yes.
so far that
That checks out. Yes.
that are written by fans
Yes.
and often posted on the internet?
I mean, this one was published. It wasn't posted on the internet.
Right, and often means
Not always.
Right. Okay. So in that case, everything's fan fiction.
No.
J.K. Rowling is a fan of her writing, so that would be fan fiction then. Dan Brown is a fan of his writing of the Da
Come
Vinci
on,
Code.
you
So,
know.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, the Cursed Child was a preconceived, intentionalized written story to expand what could be the universe of Harry Potter. It was not just someone going, I wonder if this would happen. I'm going to expand this thing and then give it to J.K. Rowling and see what she thinks. J.K. Rowling had her hands on that story. So that one specifically, except for that definition, if we're being that loose about, and sometimes published on the Cursed Child is not fan fiction. Because it's part of the universe.
A lot of people, if you search Cursed Child fan fiction, a lot of people would disagree with you, Jeff.
Okay. No, that's not.
Now here is I was going to say, has Lindsay read 50 Shades of Grey?
No.
Okay, because that is Twilight fan fiction. But because she liked the way the story was going so much, she then stripped all of the
vampires.
She changed the names of the characters. So like it's the author of 50 Shades of Grey was like, it started as Twilight fan fiction that was just BDSM fan fiction. And then she's like, oh, I think there's actually something here. And I guess she was right.
Okay, so 50 Shades of Grey is not fan fiction, but it started out as.
It started as.
Okay,
yeah.
I did not know that. No, that's not the category of reading that we normally do at ours.
We
do read jazz.
I just want to make a clarification that the fan fiction that I wrote was not smut.
No, yeah.
I was also like 13 when
that.
I wrote this, so like, not smut.
I wasn't assuming that. I'm not against fan fiction. I think going back to how the general population thinks of a conspiracy is versus the definition. Like, so
Hartley and I.
A fan fiction is something that's just like a non-published thing. That's because it can be on the internet and not be published. I mean, I guess technically that's an act of publishing, but having an agent, having a publisher company publish it.
Harley, my brother, and I, very, very nearly, we almost, it had teeth to it. We almost did it. A podcast called Squee, which was going to be where we would do dramatic readings of bad fan fiction and then discuss it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to it. It never did take off, but that was a fun idea.
Last question for you two. This is the new one for just this special occasion.
Oh, wait,
no. Oh, there's more.
Newsies isn't the only movie I've ever liked.
It's the only movie she's ever liked.
Okay.
Currently,
Paddington 2.
Definitely, for sure. If you don't like Paddington 2, then
I haven't seen the second. I've seen the first one. I love the first one. I haven't seen
the second one's much better.
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen the second.
You should watch it with your family. I definitely am watching a lot of children's movies now. Definitely very Disney forward. I love Disney. Growing up, I knew all the songs and sang them regularly. But I recently found out that I have a big interest in dystopian films.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
like Babe, Pig in the City.
Yeah. I don't know. I like dystopian films
And books.
Can you
books.
Why
do I not know any dystopian films right now? Hold on. Let me look up names.
We've been reading through the Roald Dahl books, and when we finish a book, watching the movie with the kids, and that's been a lot of fun.
What's your guys' definition of dystopian?
So the other day, I went to Dunkin' Donuts and I got a extra large coffee, cream and sugar, and asked for an old fashioned plain donut, and they said we actually just ran out.
I really like District 9.
Oh, the Hunger Games movie. District 9. I know it's not Hunger Games.
District 9 was brilliantly directed.
It was like a documentary-esque movie about an alien invasion. Basically.
Oh, District 9. Yes.
Where people would turn into cockroaches.
And
with giant cockroach.
The brilliant writing of that movie is that there basically wasn't any. The director said, "Okay, so this is what happens in this scene, and go." And it was basically all improv.
I also oddly really enjoyed Ready Player One.
Oh, which
but I
book takes
preferred
place
the book
in Ohio.
than the movie.
I've not seen or read either.
The book is very good.
You know what's a dystopian film that I didn't like?
I don't know.
Clockwork Orange.
Nelson, I love that movie.
Nelson and I.
Now, Jen, have you watched all the films that you've listened to our episodes?
No.
Okay.
I did walk. I don't know if I finished Clockwork Orange. I started watching it and couldn't get past the weird rape scene.
Yeah.
I like V for Vendetta.
Is that dystopian?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's on the top 250. We'll
Matrix would also be dystopian.
I read Fahrenheit 451. I watched several of the movie adaptations. I don't know if I like them as much as I like the book. I've read Hunger Games and for the most part enjoyed them.
It's not my favorite series. Are you familiar with those notes?
I've not read any of them.
I think the movies are well done for what the series is. I struggle with the actual storyline, but that's there
because there's a lot going on.
I actually did kind
Lindsay
of
Holmes.
oddly enjoy Mad Max.
I've not seen those. I know you guys just recently went through those.
No, Nelson watched all of them. I only watched like the not made in the 60s.
I would
ones.
say if you're going to watch any of the original trilogy, only watch the second one.
I'll watch them all, and I'll watch them all before we do.
Only watch Road Warrior. The first Mad Max is bad. Thunderdome is like two different movies mashed together, and it doesn't make any sense. Just watch Road Warrior. It's really good.
I also really enjoyed Gattaca.
I don't know what that means.
Gattaca's a fun one.
Gattaca's a really good one. So the premise of the movie is that genetic modification came to the point where you could basically custom make your children.
Oh,
and
tell me more.
And so what ended up happening was that only people who had genetic modifications were like in the high society, and people who were considered love children were out of that society. and it's somebody who is a love
Sounds nice.
child posing as a genetic modification child. So
I'd be interested to see the science behind that. Are there any Guatemalan movies that you like? Like, is there any movies that I couldn't name a Guatemalan movie, but I'm just curious, like, if there's any prolific ones that you
there
like.
is a couple of movies that have been made about Guatemala, but it's a very small country, and it's not like.
Why don't you quickly name some famous Guatemalan actors and actresses?
I mean, probably the biggest name right now would be Oscar Isaac.
He's Guatemalan?
Yeah.
Do you know him?
The other day, actually, I was talking to Nelson about this, and I'm like 3 degrees separation from him.
Like, it's entirely possible that they'd go to the same party.
Yeah. There's a Guatemalan singer who's growing in popularity right now, and her name is Gaby Moreno, and they've sang songs together. And
Wait, I think I'm familiar with her.
yeah, so they've sang songs together. And she's Guatemalan. And there's Ricardo Arjona, who is also Guatemalan, and he's more he's very famous in South America. So, like, one of the things that Guatemalans like to do is kind of like claim all of their claims to fame, right? So, like, the guy who invented CAPTCHA, he's Guatemalan.
The guy that invented Duolingo.
Yeah, he's Guatemalan.
There's a gold medal speedwalker.
Yeah.
Who's Guatemalan?
Olympic gold medal.
Olympic gold medal speedwalker. Exciting stuff.
I mean, there's been several Nobel Peace Prize winners, Nobel. I
didn't hear Nobel.
Cool.
Prizes for literature. The person who invented instant coffee was Guatemalan.
Boo. Just kidding. Sorry, I'm
I
a
mean,
coffee snob. That's
Just
awesome.
kidding.
I know.
Whatever we can claim, really.
No,
We're
it's
just
cool.
super excited to be patriotic about it.
I've not been to Central America. I've been to South America.
Who cares?
Brazil.
Nice.
But I would love to go. I'd love to visit Central America and see. Actually, I think friends of mine are actually going to Guatemala this summer for a mission trip. They're going summer mission trip. That's fact. I think it's Guatemala. But anyways,
Guatemala's a pretty popular destination for mission trips.
Yeah, Guatemala,
It makes me laugh because, like, there is no place in Guatemala that the gospel hasn't already reached.
Well, yeah, and this could be a whole other episode. I don't know if I necessarily agree with how America does mission trips. That's a whole other thing.
Poverty tourism.
Sometimes.
No, every single time. This is a blanket statement that's always true, Jeff.
Okay, fine.
I would like to say,
but like,
for anybody who is listening who is considering going to a third world country, out of consideration for the people who live there, take time to go see what's really nice about that country.
Right.
Because it is, to me, very patriotic Guatemalan. It feels disrespectful when people just go to see
the giant trash dump.
The trash dump, the poorest of the poor, the people who are living in squalor.
Right.
And while that is true about that country, that is also true about this country.
Absolutely.
But there are also beautiful things to be seen.
Absolutely.
And especially in countries like Guatemala, tourism is one of the main industries. So if you want to help people get ahead, give into the industry.
Right.
Right.
No, and that I absolutely agree with that. Like, and I think I went to Brazil twice for a mission trip, and it changed my life. Like, to experience, I've never experienced poverty like that before. Like, I saw it like, and I do feel like the work we did, we worked with an orphanage both times, the same orphanage. Like I feel like what we did had an impact, but what makes a bigger impact is long term.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And it's like stuff like with YWAM and stuff like that.
When I say poverty tourism, that's not to say that it's not valuable.
No, but you can't. For me, poverty tourism sounds like a negative title.
And it kind of has a negative connotation.
But I don't want to discourage children for going on a mission trip. I think there is value in it, but I don't think mission trips are the way us Americans are going to save other countries.
Right. And maybe we should qualify them as something different and not call them mission trips, because we're not, like, with a week that you spend in another country, you're not making a deep, lasting impact on somebody else's life.
I read an article about...
In fact, the person who's having a deep impact had on their life is the person who's going on the mission trip, right? So there's like two tiers of mission trips. There's the ones that will have an impact on the person who's doing the mission,
right? And
then there's the people who are truly dedicating their life to this stuff. Right. And I know several of those who are
long-term poverty tourists.
Stop. I read an article about a guy who was incarcerated for a while. And then after getting out, I don't know if he had a coming to faith moment, but when he came out, he wanted to be rehabilitated. So he wanted to add value versus he wanted to stay out of the things that he was in, the problems he was in. So one thing it is, he went on a mission trip, a week-long mission trip. While he was down there, he realized that when they were getting ready to go back, I'm paraphrasing the whole story. This was in a coffee magazine, and you'll get why it makes talk about coffee here in a second. But by the end of the trip, he realized, like, by the end of that week-long trip, he's like, wait, hold on. What we just did this week we were here could have been jobs done by employed locals.
Yes.
And so he ended up staying. He didn't go back with the rest of the crew. He stayed down there. He's like, okay, I don't like what we just did because there's locals that need jobs, that could use jobs, and we didn't. So he started working with coffee farmers. And he's like, how can I assist you who are already doing stuff, who are already here? How can I help you long-term versus just coming, doing jobs that someone else could do and eliminating jobs for locals? And then, so he ended up starting, he learned the coffee growing process and eventually moved back to the States because he ended up staying there for months for that first trip, moved back to the States, opened up a coffee roasting shop. And then he only uses beans from the farm that he made a relationship with. Mm-hmm. And now he directly sources. He doesn't use an agent. He doesn't use he directly resources from a farm that's now employing locals to, and he's growing. So it's like, I read that. I'm like, man, as someone who grew up in a church was like mission trip every summer, mission trip. I'm like, I never thought about it can have negative ramifications to the countries.
They do have negative economic
You can
externalities,
still make an impact, but at what cost for some of the other things that are affected by it? It's like, again, this is a whole other
There's
conversation.
also the psychology
But here's something I want to say to people who are believers, who are listening. If you go to another country for a missions trip, I give you permission to enjoy that country and don't feel guilty about going to the tourist traps, going to the pretty places.
Enjoy the beauty.
Because you are helping the people out by doing that.
Buy local, eat local.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't drink the water. But just as someone from outside, like, you could be negatively affected. Not that it's
but your inability to be able to assimilate to the culture a little bit can be impactful for what you're trying to do.
Right. But if you have to fly 2 days later, don't
eat and drink food. Eat and drink what's offered to you.
If you are going as a missionary,
it'll negatively impact
your witness. If you're going as a tourist, it's one thing. But if you're going as a missionary to people's homes,
trust what Paul told us to do, which is to eat and drink what's offered to us.
I mean, look, I've been in situations where I've had to personally translate for pastors who are telling their group not to eat and drink the food that is being offered.
And
that is such an insult to people whose culture it is to feed people.
Right. And we went to many houses.
Let's talk about even the water thing, because
the tap water.
Let's talk specifically about the water thing. Jen was in a situation where she had to translate for a pastor who was saying, don't drink the water. Don't drink the water. And the family she was translating to the pastor for was like, well, we boiled all this water, and like even the ice cubes are from frozen boil. Like, it's this very clean water. We were very careful. And he's like, no, I won't touch it. That negatively impacts his witness to that family.
Yeah, because they said, you guys are our second attempt to bring in people from the United States, because the first group we brought in did not touch any of the food that we made. And these are people who aren't wealthy. They are taking from their own family source of food to give to these Americans, and they wouldn't touch the food. And it was seen as an insult.
No, we were told to eat all the food. It was just specifically the water that comes from the well.
Even the water thing, like there are preparations you can take ahead of time so that you can purify that water in the moment. And the reason I bring all this up is because of how much it negatively impacts your witness, first of all. Second of all, like, these are because of how often short-term missions is somewhat poverty tourism. A lot of these times, the families that are providing these food and drinks, like, this is a significant amount of their budget that they are giving to you.
It's a sacrifice.
And also, Paul was very clear that we are not to worry about that stuff, and we are to just take what's offered and be thankful for it. And we need to trust that God is going to protect our bodies, right? Like that is very specifically a lack, in my opinion, a lack of faith when you're saying, I won't touch that because what if I get sick? Like,
I've been on mission trips where people have gotten sick. So I'm like, and I
had to. So
just like, for me, it's not.
I've been on mission trips.
It's not a faith thing.
I've gotten sick.
Right. It's not a faith thing. It's a logic thing. It's like, okay, if we're flying out in 2 days, it's like, I'm not going to put something in my system.
Leaving the country, you're in risk anyway. Like, any
airborne
illness.
House.
Right. I'm just saying, but
okay, here's another thing.
Don't
be afraid of drinking a little bit of alcohol. A little bit of alcohol kills many.
Drink some wine for your stomach's sake.
Yeah.
Right, especially on a mission trip.
What Paul said to Timothy.
You know what? Wine is prevalent in the Bible.
Right. I mean, we're talking youth mission trips. I'm
sure.
Like, adult mission trips, totally different thing. College trips, completely different thing. But
I think people should start drinking alcohol younger.
Gosh, we haven't even started to talk about the movie, guys. And I have one more question for you guys. This episode is going to be longer than the movie we watched.
Unlikely.
When did you guys meet? What's your love story?
In 2010.
August 10th, 2010.
Cool. Awesome. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. Is there more to that? So what's the...
It may or may not have been
I elbowed her in the chest. and apologized, and she claimed she didn't notice. And I said, I find that hard to believe. I feel like a woman would notice that kind of thing. And she thought that I was very cocky, and I thought she was very arrogant.
We're right.
We're right.
What's the cult thing?
We met serving in a mission
I
organization.
accidentally elbowed her in the chest. If it wasn't clear that I said I didn't, if I didn't say accent, it was an accident.
We assume it was intentional.
I now that I know you better,
called
I'm
groping?
wondering.
No, I was talking dramatically with my hands, and they were flying, and she was standing behind me.
That's called
we met in
groping.
we joined the same mission organization in a program that they had for young adults, and we stayed there for 3 years because after the commitment of the first year, we realized that we probably wanted to marry each other and didn't know how to stay together if we left. So.
None of that describes a cult.
Oh no, of course not. I'm not.
Okay. Right, but you said a cult. You've got to have more to that story.
It wasn't until after we left the ministry that we started like seeing all the red flags in retrospect.
Okay.
There was the if you don't like it, there's the door. Every time you had anything to say
Any
against
kind of
them,
You can never leave a cult.
That's
well,
not true.
that's also one of them. A big part of
misconception.
cults. A big part of cults is brainwashing people into thinking that they're like stepping out of God's will if they leave the cult.
And social ostracization of anybody who has left.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
that's definitely true of that one. There's like the very charismatic leader, and there's a lot of things that there's like.
We started going down the list of things that are typical of cults, and we're like, check, 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 check.
Yeah,
It's a Christian cult, but it's a cult.
You're describing the Amish.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a faith-based cult, but it's an Amish.
If you're Amish and you're
But it's
listening
an
to
Amish.
this,
It's an Amish. If you're Amish and you're listening to this, happy Rumspringer.
yeah, if you're Amish and you're listening to this, we're sure that you're not. Come talk to us about you might be in a cult.
You might be a redneck. Jeff Foxworthy. Gone with the Wind.
Break like the wind.
1939. 3 hours. Okay, now I already have something I want to add to this as I'm getting into the details here. Let me bring this up. Okay, all right. So this movie, according to IMDb, is 3 hours and 58 minutes. When I got onto HBO Max to because I see this because I knew that HBO Max had a not Turner Classic Movies. Maybe it is TCM. This HBO's version had a specific like caveat at the beginning where someone talked about it and kind of gave a preface about it. I wanted to see what they had to say. So I watched the HBO version, the Max streaming service version, and that version was actually 15 minutes shorter, even including the 4 or 5 minute caveat at the beginning. Because this movie was for like 2 days removed from HBO Max because of things that we'll inevitably talk about in this episode. But then they brought it right back on with that caveat of going, here's why this movie is a little controversial, which, again, I have thoughts about that. And so instead of taking it off, we're going to keep it on, and we're just going to let you know at the beginning, kind of like what Disney does with some of their movies now that are like, that were a little bit more, anyway, they did that. So I watched that. So, but there's when I went to IMDb, I was like, okay, is this the only 2 time variations? And it's not. There are multiple different runtimes, so the longest being 358. The re-release is 343, which was about the length of what I watched. No, I'm sorry. There's a copyright length, which is 3 hours and 46 minutes. That's the one I watched. There's a work print, which is 425, 4 hours and 25 minutes. There's United Kingdom, like all different countries have different lengths.
Yeah.
So like the one I watched was the HBO Max version with the caveat at the beginning, which we'll get into. So yeah, that's the runtime. That's the given runtime of IMDb. 1939. This movie was directed by Victor Fleming. Victor Fleming.
And?
Do you have the other 2 uncredited ones?
Hold on.
According to IMDb, the other 2 are uncredited, so I only kept the Victor Fleming one.
Okay, there are...
Because sometimes there's co-directors, but this is the first time I acknowledge seeing uncredited.
It's a little bit more complicated than just uncredited. Victor Fleming quit. George Cukor, Cukor, took over, and then he also quit. And then Sam Wood took over.
And then he quit.
He had assistance from a secondary guy.
Nice.
Victor Fleming did Captain's Courageous, which used to be in the top 250, and Wizard of Oz, which still is.
I was going to say that.
George Cukor also worked on Wizard of Oz.
Same year, by the way. Wizard of Oz came out in 1939.
Right. Yep. Also, My Fair Lady, which is on the top 250, and the Philadelphia Story as well, also top 250. Sam Wood worked on A Night at the Opera, which was on the top 250. I don't think it is anymore. George Cukor also worked on the movie Gaslight, which is where we actually get the term gaslighting.
This movie passed.
Did I steal all of your?
You did.
facts?
You did.
Nice.
Except for the co-director stuff. The Wizard of Oz stuff was. No, yeah. This movie passed, so good for it. It passed then. It doesn't get passed much
Can
now.
you repeat?
So passed means it was before there was a rating system. So movies were either passed or not passed, essentially, or sometimes it was approved or not approved. Those words interchange. It just meant that this is approved for you to watch.
Fit for the for
This
human
is yeah,
consumption.
so that's kind of where their rating system stopped, was approved or not approved. So this movie passed. Victor Fleming also did Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the original 1941 version. We did a movie not too long ago called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington that also came out in 1939.
That's right.
So,
And there's a character in this that was in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
yeah, we'll get to that when we get to notable cast. Was this movie based on a book? Yes. Which one was it? I know the answer to this one.
Margaret Mitchell's book of the same name.
When did that movie release?
The movie or the book?
Yes, the book.
The book released in 1936.
Okay.
So she wrote a romance novella called Lost Lazen. When she
Was it fan fiction?
Might have been. She was 15 years old when she wrote it. And
Definitely.
she had written it in 2 notebooks to a boyfriend, Henry Love Angel. He died in 1945, and the novella remained undiscovered among some letters she had written to him until 1994. The novella was published in 1996, 8 years after it was written, and became a New York Times bestseller. She also wrote a book called The Big Four. It was a 400-page novel about a girl at boarding school, and it's thought to be lost. Mitchell destroyed some of her manuscripts herself, and others were destroyed after her death. She wrote a book called Ropa Carmagen in the 1920s. It was a novelette that she pitched at the same time as Gone with the Wind. It was rejected because it was thought to be too short. It's about a Southern white girl who falls in love with a biracial man. As much as, I know this is going to come up and I'm going to repeatedly defend it, as much as this movie has, by modern understandings, some complicated, we'll say, politics, it was, for its time, incredibly progressive. So, and all seemingly, especially as we can see from Ropa Carmagen, that was true of a lot of her writings.
Notable cast. Clark Gable.
Mhm.
I didn't recognize any of the other films he was in. I know he was prolific, and
You recognize the name at least.
yeah, but I only know him from this movie.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he wasn't prolific at the time. Just
There's a very good chance we'll see him again.
probably.
It Happened One Night is currently 247 on the top 250.
What happened?
It.
Okay,
He was also in Mutiny on the Bounty.
a pirate movie. Maybe, I don't know. Just
I think so.
could be.
Sounds like it might be.
Katie Scarlett O'Hara was played by Vivian Leigh or Leigh or
Lee.
Leah Lee.
Also,
she was in his. Whose job is this? You're peacocking right now, Nelson. I know your wife's here.
What was she in, Jeff?
A Streetcar
Named Desire.
and Anna Karina.
That's right.
Karenina.
Karenina.
Karen.
Karenina.
Aaron Karen.
Banana Corona.
Aaron Karen. Thomas Mitchell.
Can I say it?
You guys are gaslighting me. I don't
It's
even know.
gas lamping.
You guys are gas lamping. You guys are Mary Poppinsing me. Yes, Jen. Thomas Mitchell. What was he in?
He was in It's a Wonderful Life.
And
I don't know.
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Jinx, you owe me a Coke. Yeah. And we had talked about him not too long ago.
That's right.
Knowing that we knew he was coming back in this movie.
That's right.
We were
I think
prepared for his
it's
second
funny
coming.
that the
third
man
coming.
who plays Ashley also has a woman's name in real life.
Does he?
His name is Leslie.
Last name Nielsen.
8.2 out of 10 on IMDb.
Mhm.
It currently is at number 163 in the top 250.
That's right.
Does this movie have history on the top 250?
Boy, does it. 95 at its highest. Despite some long-term volatility, it's mostly... Despite some long-term volatility, it's mostly remained in around 160. But at its highest, it was 95.
Has it always been on the 250?
It has.
Okay. What about before 96?
Was
Was it on the 250 and 95?
Yes.
Nice. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 90% tomato meter and 92% audience. Did this movie have a budget?
No, it was a budgetless movie.
Budgetless
First of its
movie.
kind.
First of its kind.
They spent no money on it.
3.85 million, which is 85 million today, roughly.
That's a lot.
Not from modern Hollywood
I mean, I've never
standards.
seen $85
For
million.
a really long movie, I would expect it to be a lot higher because
For
the
its-
sets were huge in
Sets
this
were
movie.
huge. Costuming was incredible.
There was scenes that had many
Yeah.
like even if they were free, like even if they were working for free extras,
Yeah.
there were still a lot of people, and they probably had to
people
feed them.
working for free in a movie about slavery.
Yeah, yeah. That surprises me. I figured it'd be more money because I'm curious. Nelson, can you bring this up right now? We're going to talk about the Wizard of Oz eventually in the future. What was the Wizard of Oz's budget? Because I would expect that one to have a bigger budget. I'm just curious if it does. For both coming out in the same year, same director, big cast, big sets.
So without doing any of the currency exchange, the budget of Gone with the Wind was $3.85 million in its day. The budget of Wizard of Oz was 2.8
It
in
was
its
a little
day.
smaller.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
By about $1 million. By $1 million.
Well, I guess a lot of the cast in that movie was half size. So
Yeah, that's right. You only had to pay him half as much.
Ooh,
That's good. That was a good joke. Jeff.
Oh
You should be proud
man.
of that one.
Woo.
We can save costs by hiring short people.
Short people. I know you love that song.
No
We've talked-
reason.
All right. Gone with the Wind.
Hold on. Was there a name drop in this movie?
Yeah. Scarlett O'Hara. No. Did they say the thing?
Did they say
I don't
the
know.
thing?
Did they? I don't know.
So nobody
Yes.
says it, but it's in the opening crawl.
Yeah.
But
There was a land of cavaliers and cotton fields called the Old South. Here in the pretty world, gallantry took its last bow. There was the last ever to be seen of knights and their ladies, of master and of slave. Look for it only in books, for it is no more than a dream remembered. A civilization gone with the wind.
does that count?
I
No,
think
no.
so.
They didn't say the thing. They wrote the thing.
They did.
It was on the screen.
Yeah.
But either way, yeah, it was in there. Gone with the Wind, guys.
Break like the wind.
It,
Before we discuss it,
There's more.
I would like to read something. We've never done this before.
Is this a mantra?
We've never done this before.
Is this your vows?
Yeah, I do. No, Roger Ebert. Are you familiar with the name?
Yes. He's a movie critic.
He was a movie critic. That's right. Until he tragically passed 10 years ago today. I don't know. If that's true. It was in 2013.
10 years ago on a day.
On a day. But he reviewed this movie. And I wanted to read through his review of the movie. So this was written in 1988. No, it can't be right. 1998. The 60th anniversary of the movie.
1908.
Gone with the Wind presents a sentimental view of the Civil War in which the Old South takes the place of Camelot, and the war was fought not so much to defeat the Confederacy and free the slaves as to give Miss Scarlett O'Hara her comeuppance. But we've known that for years. The tainted nostalgia comes with the territory. Yet as Gone with the Wind approaches its 60th anniversary, it is still a towering landmark of film, quite simply, because it tells a good story, and it tells it wonderfully well. For the story it wanted to tell, it was the right film at the right time. Scarlett O'Hara is not a creature of the 1860s, but of the 1930s. A free-spirited, willful, modern woman. The way was prepared for her by the flappers of Fitzgerald's jazz age, by the bold movie actresses of the period, and by the economic reality of the Depression, which for the first time put lots of women to work outside their homes. Scarlett's lust and headstrong passions have little to do with myths of delicate southern flowers, and everything to do with the sex symbols of the movies that shaped her creator, Margaret Mitchell. Actresses such as Clara Bow, Jean Harlow, Louise Brooks, and Mae West. She was a woman who wanted to control her own sexual adventures, and that is the key element in her appeal. She also sought to control her economic destiny in the years after the South collapsed, first by planting cotton and later by running a successful lumber business. She was the symbol the nation needed as it headed into World War II, the spiritual sister of Rosie the Riveter. Of course, she could not quite be allowed to get away with marrying 3 times, coveting sweet Melanie's husband Ashley, shooting a plundering Yankee, and banning her third husband from the marital bed in order to protect her petite waistline from the toll of childbearing. It fascinated audiences, it fascinates us still, to see her high-wire defiance in a male chauvinist world. But eventually, such behavior had to be punished. And that is why, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And that is what, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn is all about. If Gone with the Wind had ended with Scarlett's unquestioned triumph, it might not have been it might not have been nearly as successful. Its original audiences, women I suspect even more than men, wanted to see her swatted down, even though, of course, tomorrow would be another day. Rhett Butler was just the man to do it. As he tells Scarlett in a key early scene, "You need kissing badly. That's what's wrong with you. You should be kissed and often, and by someone who knows how." For kissed, substitute the word you're thinking of. Dialogue like that reaches something deep and fundamental in most people. It stirs their fantasies about being brought to sexual pleasures despite themselves. Know why women love the horse whisperer? I was asked by a woman friend not long ago. They figure if that's what he can do with a horse, think what he could do with me. Scarlett's confusion is between her sentimental fixation on a tepid southern gentleman, Ashley Wilkes. Jeff is making quite the face.
Whoa.
Scarlett's confusion is between her sentimental fixation on a tepid southern gentleman, Ashley Wilkes, and her unladylike lust for a bold man, Rhett Butler. The most thrilling struggle in Gone with the Wind is not between North and South, but between Scarlett's lust and her vanity. Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh were well matched in the 2 most coveted movie roles of the era. Both were well served by a studio system that pumped out idealized profiles and biographies. But we know now that what outlaws they were. Gable, the hard-drinking playboy whose studio covered up his scandals. Leigh, the neurotic, drug-abusing beauty who was the despair of every man who loved her. They brought experience, well-formed tastes, and strong egos to their roles, and the camera, which cannot lie and often shows more than the story intends. caught the flash of an eye and the readiness of body language that suggested sexual challenge. Consider the early scene where they first laid eyes on each other during the barbecue at 12 Oaks. Rhett exchanges a cool, challenging stare with Scarlett, observes the critic Tim Dirks. She notices him undressing her with his eyes. He looks as if he knows what I look like without my shimmy. If the central drama of Gone with the Wind is the rise and fall of a sexual adventuress, the counterpoint is a slanted but passionate view of the Old South. Unlike most historical epics, Gone with the Wind has a genuine sweep, a convincing feel for the passage of time. It shows the South before, during, and after the war, all seen through Scarlett's eyes, and Scarlett is a Southerner. So is Margaret Mitchell. The movie signals its values in the printed narration that opens the film, it in language that seems astonishing in its bland, unquestioned assumptions. There's a land of cavaliers and cotton fields called the Old South. We're going to skip that. That's the introductory read that we just did. One does not have to ask if the slaves saw it the same way. The movie sidesteps the inconvenient fact that plantation gentility was purchased with the sweat of slaves. There's more sympathy for Scarlett getting calluses on her pretty little hands than for all the crimes of slavery. But to its major African-American characters, it does at least grant humanity and complexity. Hattie McDaniel as Mammy is the most sensible and clear-sighted person in the entire story. She won one of the film's 8 Oscars. And although Butterfly McQueen as Prissy will always be associated with the line, "I don't know nothing about birth and babies," the character as a whole is engaging and subtly subversive. Remember that when Gone with the Wind was made, segregation was still the law in the South and the reality in the North. That the Ku Klux Klan was written out of the scene for fear of giving offense to elected officials who belonged to it. The movie comes from a world with values and assumptions fundamentally different from our own. And yet, of course, so does all great classic fiction, starting with Homer and Shakespeare. A politically correct Gone with the Wind would not be worth making and might largely be a lie. As an example of filmmaking craft, Gone with the Wind is still astounding. Several directors worked on the film. George Cukor incurred Clark Gable's dislike and was replaced by Victor Fleming, who collapsed from nervous exhaustion and was relieved by Sam Wood and Cameron Menzies. Apparently, I got the order of some of those directors wrong.
Oh, he had the Menzies.
The Menzies. The real auteur was the producer, David O. Selznick, the Steven Spielberg of his day, who understood that the key to mass appeal was the linking of melodrama with the state-of-the-art production values. Some of the individual shots in Gone with the Wind still have the power to leave us breathless, including the burning of Atlanta, the flight to Tara, and the Street of Dying Men. Shot as Scarlett wanders into the street, and the camera pulls back until the whole Confederacy seems to lie broken and bleeding as far as the eye can see. And there's a joyous flamboyance in the visual style that is appealing in these days when so many directors have trained on the blandness of television. Consider an early shot where Scarlett and her father look out over the land and the camera pulls back. The two figures in a tree held in black silhouette with the landscape behind them, or the way the flames of Atlanta are framed to backdrop Scarlett's flight in the carriage. I've seen Gone with the Wind in 4 of its major theatrical revivals, 1954, 1961, 1967, and 1989, and now here in the 1998 restoration. It will be around for years to come, a superb example of Hollywood's art, and a time capsule of weathering sentimentality for a civilization gone with the wind. All right, gone but not forgotten.
And that's our episode, guys.
I wanted to read that because I think it really captures one of my frustrations with how the movie presently gets trigger warninged, because I think that misses the point. Does that make sense?
What misses the point? The trigger warnings?
Yeah.
Okay.
The way it misses the point is that it insinuates that the authors and creators of the production were seemingly unaware or trying to discreetly ignore what was actually happening at the time. I think Margaret Mitchell, we can infer from her other writings, was very much aware exactly what the South was actually like. Was very controversial in writing a biracial character in a time when that like legal segregation existed. And the fact that they had to remove a KKK scene, I think, shows that they intended it to be much more explicit than they were allowed to be. It's not the way people talk about it. It's almost like I was expecting, because this was my first time seeing it, I was expecting like some kind of like tap dancing minstrel show or repeated use of the N-word, and that's not
the only swear word in this movie is "damn" at the end.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I feel like a lot of the racial trigger warning surrounding this movie is really unwarranted.
I agree for different reasons.
We know that we know from the context of the movie that the slaves, the black people that lived with the O'Hara family were freemen. They say that. We know that Ashley was about to inherit the slaves and intended to set them free. The only person in the movie who didn't seem to care about slavery later also uses forced labor, and it's clear like she's not a likable. It's like you're not supposed to like Scarlett O'Hara, you know. Yeah. So I feel that it's kind of misguided and misplaced, and it was frustrating for me when I watched it and saw, like, I felt like a lot of that disclaimer stuff was, I feel like it misses the point.
We live in a culture, and even, I mean, and not just currently in 2024, like the last 10 years, I'd say, I've noticed that a lot of people are just more hypersensitive to things.
Yeah.
A lot of people are jumping to conclusions. Just because someone says something doesn't mean that there's more to it, or there's more that they need to explain to give their perspective.
Right.
We immediately go, oh, you like this, that means this. You watch this, that means this. There's
Are you
slavery
about to say
in this
that
movie.
I was jumping to conclusions?
No.
Oh, okay.
There's slavery in this movie, so that
I
means
was.
this movie's inappropriate. like we're quick to cancel things.
Yeah.
And we've been quick to cancel things for a while. And I think this movie, just because it deals with slavery, I mean, like you've got country artists like the Lady Antebellum.
They changed their names.
They changed their name to Lady A because Antebellum is now a negative term.
Right.
Dixie Chicks are just now the chicks.
Yeah.
Like all these things are happening because everyone's afraid
To be associated.
of acknowledging something.
What do we do with your last name?
I think Hicks is the least of the.
I think we should legally change our last name to Hillbilly. Just lean in.
So if people are running to this movie for, I want to get a glimpse in the South in the 1860s.
Yeah.
Don't watch this movie.
That's not what this movie
This
does.
movie's not historically accurate. This movie does not encompass the wide range of historically accurate lifestyles in the South. There were multiple different types.
Yes.
This is a very finite glimpse that's not even accurate itself.
Well,
it's like for that to be the thing.
Let's pull back, because one of the things that you repeatedly nail me on is if I speak in generalities, you talk about specifics, right? When I say people enlist because of X, you say, well, not everybody does that, and
Correct.
that's correct.
Okay.
Not every wealthy plantation family in the South was a slaving family.
Right. It's right.
Right. And so
That's what I was
so just as much as it's true that this movie is not an accurate depiction of slavery in the South, it's wrong to say that it's historically inaccurate, because these types of families did exist. Families that
The
treat
Civil War never happened.
Oh, next you're going to tell me we've been to the moon.
Georgia is not a state. No, yeah.
So I would say these families families like this
Did exist. But like for people to assume this is what the South was like,
Right.
inappropriate. Like yeah.
This is what high society was like for
Could-
some.
for some.
For
yes,
some.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like every family was different. There were families that were even like
No, two families were the same, actually. I looked it up. Identical in every way.
just like yeah, there were some Southern slave owners that were trash. That
There were-
treated but then there were some
There were Southern slave owners who were themselves freemen.
right.
Right?
I
like
just-
it's so much more complicated
And
than just this blacks and
so
whites, wealthy and
for
poor.
this movie to be like considered a depiction of what the South was like, it's inaccurate.
I think it's a great depiction of what the values of people in the Southern aristocracy were.
I have to say something. Part of the reason that I wanted to do this movie
She's declaring this.
is because I resonated with
Mammy.
with living in that kind of way.
Mhm.
Growing
You were
up,
from the South in the 1860s.
no, but growing up,
I have a time traveling.
all of the people that I know, including my family, we had domestic help, and so
Were they paid?
Yes.
Okay, so
it's not
that's not
slavery,
slavery.
right?
It's like I wouldn't put that
But-
in the same category.
But so
no,
were,
but a lot of the
these were
the
slave
stuff.
They were freemen as well.
But hold on, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the scenes where there was somebody there, those kinds of situations are very familiar to me. You know,
Yeah. I mean, paid help. I compared to like Jeffrey the Butler and
But
Will Smith's
in-
like,
in-
Fresh Prince. Like
in a-
that's just a paid act of service. Like you're paying them for service.
But we were
versus,
talking
like,
about like the society and the feel of it, as
Okay.
well as the
So was there a
slavery
class difference
Oh, yeah.
between? Okay,
100%.
But how was your? If I can ask,
Yeah.
how was your family's interaction with? Like because we already talked about like Scarlett is not a likable character. So like we knew
She's not supposed to be.
and we knew and we expected her to be rude and crude to her help.
I have
So
I
she-
have known people who the help stays in that side of the house and they only come when we ask them. They do not ask politely for things. They demand them.
You have people within your family like this.
Yes.
Not immediate family.
But I remember not my greatest moment of my life. I was young. I was 12 maybe.
That
and
is
I was
younger than what you. Are.
so one of the aspects that I like about this, Mammy is like one of my favorite
Mhm.
people in this story.
She
I
won an award
loved
for this
her.
movie. Yep.
But the reality that there are still people being raised by not their parents that's something I grew up with, right? And I very distinctly remember being told to do something by the lady that worked at my aunt and uncle's house, and I said something to the effect of, You work for me. I don't work for you. You can't tell me what to do. And my aunt walked in when I was doing that.
Oof.
I was reamed up and down and sideways. I was scolded so harshly because I mean, looking back, I should have never spoken to another human being in that way. Right. But I was also figuring it out. Right. I was figuring out living in the society where we do have domestic help. And there are people who, you know, like, you don't eat at this table. You don't hang out in this space.
So it was different than having like a butler or a nanny. Like there was a classism separation between the people that were serving you in your house versus it being a Jeffrey, you know, thank you. Like, again, I'm referring to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but like
my immediate family, growing up, we had a lady that would come. We had a lady who would come to the house and she would clean from 2 to 5 every day. That was the extent of the domestic help. But there was a moment when the house, the neighborhood that she was living in was completely flooded. Like the water was to the doorway. And when my mom found out, she took the microbus that we had, gathered all of the children of the neighborhood into the car, brought them to the house, scrubbed them all down. They had that swimming club. They had a bunch of lost and found items. They used that stuff to clothe these kids. And this lady has named several of her grandchildren after the members of my family. This is a friendship that supersedes that, right? So it's not everybody has that class difference, but there are like rules to it that are unspoken, right? Like even if we had invited her to sit at the table with us to eat, she probably wouldn't have done it. When she invited us to her house to eat at the table with her, that was acceptable. But when she was at our house, it made her feel very uncomfortable. Right?
So it's a hierarchy system. It's not just in a place of employment. It's not a
and you saw it.
It's not a mutually beneficial.
You also saw it with Mammy when she got the petticoat. Well, that's what it was, right?
A red petticoat. She waited a very long time to wear it, and then even then wore it underneath her clothes. Yeah,
I think that the majority of the people that I know are closer to what Rhett was like with Mammy, with the people that work with them, than anything else that we saw.
I was like, on the topic of like the slavery aspect in this film, like, I've watched many films on the Civil War era, like movies that have taken place during the Civil War. So like, and for me, it was like, all the interactions that had to do with Mammy in Pork and like,
and Sissy.
So yeah, like those interactions, like all the negative parts were because O'Hara was a witch. Like, so like, I didn't even see any moments in this movie that were drastically like slave owner to slave. It was just, Scarlett O'Hara's a jerk. Like,
so there was one moment.
And she was slightly more of a jerk to them.
We were watching this movie because of that HBO Max preface going, okay, what did we miss last time that's going to make us offended now that we have a black daughter and like we're going to be super hyper aware of this? I was like, no, like,
so the way that Sissy was panicking when it was time for the baby to come,
she doesn't know nothing
and
about
she was slapped.
babies.
Like, I would consider that Scarlett would have slapped anyone acting like that.
She would have slapped it red. She would have slapped her paw. If her paw, like I think Scarlett would have slapped anyone.
I don't think it was because Sissy was
hysterical. Right.
Yeah, it was just because she was being hysterical and she needed somebody that could do something.
Right. So it's okay. Before we get deeper into this, like, Nelson, you said this was your first time watching it. Was this your first time watching it, Jen?
This was my second time watching it.
This was my second time watching it. Both times I had watched it fairly recently. Since 2020, I've watched this movie twice now. Okay. Nelson, did you like this movie? Just real quickly, like.
As a blanket statement, yes.
Okay. Jen, do you like this movie?
Yes.
Okay. Lindsay and I, we broke this 4-hour movie up in 4 viewings. We made it a mini series.
You watched it 4 times.
Yeah. No. We still loathe this movie.
Yeah.
Like it was easier to watch in 4-hour segments, 4 1-hour segments. But like
it's long.
But like it's not the length that even deterred us. There's no growth from anyone in this movie.
I don't think that's true.
Rhett Butler's the same. He's stoic.
No.
He's the same. Absolutely.
No.
Absolutely.
I don't agree with you.
Okay, tell me why.
I think that he says he loved Scarlett from the first. I don't think that that's true. I think that he really disliked her at first and grew to love her character.
I think he was entertained by her at first.
And he decided to become monogamous with her. I think that's growth.
And then also, and then
he went to a hooker
because she refused in the marriage bed.
Right. So he was not.
He desired monogamy.
Sure, but he chose to become monogamous at least for a time. And whether or not that stuck, that's growth.
And when I can't remember the name, the hooker that he frequents, when she said
The most honest person in this movie.
a child is worth 10 wives, he committed himself to being the absolute best father he could be, which...
But I think he had that in him the whole time. Like, we see Rhett Butler, he's a hard worker. He's a man of the people. We see him as this prominent figure, this hard, like he's good at whatever he's put his hands on. So the fact that he's a good father is just equivalent to the person that we've already seen him as, because he's been good at everything else he's done.
That's okay, but you're missing.
That's not growth. That's just adding something else to what he's done.
It is growth because
he's the same person.
No, he's not.
Absolutely.
All through the Civil War, what does he do? He's a privateer.
He's a merchant, right?
He is what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word when you take advantage of an opportunity? An opportunist.
No, that can't be it.
He's an opportunist at the Civil War, using the war as a way to enrich himself. Okay? He is concerned about one thing and one thing only, and that's Rhett Butler. What can Rhett Butler get? That's why he's not a marrying man. When he becomes a father and he commits himself fully to being an excellent father, that is growth. That he is now spending all of his energy on enriching somebody that's not Rhett Butler. He's not living for Rhett Butler anymore. He wanted to live for Scarlett O'Hara. She wouldn't let him. And so now he's going to live every moment for his daughter. And then when the daughter dies, Scarlett's already realized too little too late what a good situation she had. He's like, I don't give a damn. His character growth is that he goes from a man who lives exclusively for what he wants to a man that wants to, who's now a marrying man. He's gone from being not a marrying man to a marrying man. He wants to make her happy. That's what he wants to do for the rest of his life. And when that's not an option, I'm going to make my child happy for the rest of her life. And now he has nothing left. He has a really deep character arc. Scarlett O'Hara also has a character arc, but she learns very little, and she learns it very, very slowly.
Mm-hmm. She's super.
Her arc doesn't happen until the very end, when she finally realizes, oh, I was chasing Ashley the whole time, and that wasn't correct. No. Now I want you, and he's
You're
like,
right.
no, like,
you're right.
Like
Scarlett O'Hara on the plantation in the first act and the second act, totally same Scarlett O'Hara.
Yes.
Yeah, the one picking cotton is the exact same as the one that's
Scarlett
romancing all the men.
O'Hara has her epiphany moments at very key places, and then doesn't change until her next epiphany.
Her motivation is all the same. Her motivation is Scarlett O'Hara.
No, her motivation was Ashley until she
for
was
her
hungry.
benefit. Because she wanted Ashley, not because it's like everything she wanted was because of what she can get from when she got Rhett Butler is because, oh, how do you feel now? Rich. Like everything she wanted is because of how it affected her.
I think
so when she started plowing the field, it was because she could benefit from it because now someone else isn't doing it. Like everything she was doing was selfish.
At the beginning of the movie,
yes.
What did Scarlett O'Hara want more than anything else?
It was 4 days ago. Hold on. A man.
No.
What?
A specific man.
It's Ashley.
Okay. Well, I assumed. I just didn't know if you were
at the midway point of the movie.
She wanted Ashley the whole movie.
No.
Yes.
Up until the very end. You're not wrong.
All she wanted was Ashley. Then, as you said, all she wanted was money. At one point, all she wanted was food. Yes, she is very inwardly focused.
Yeah.
But her motivation changed several times throughout the movie. And at key points, as Jen pointed out, she had epiphanies. She learned very little. She learned it very slowly.
Her motivation was herself.
No, hold on. She learned very little. She learned very slowly. She's very inwardly focused. All true.
Yes.
But she had a character arc.
There was change in her character.
Maybe a speed bump. I wouldn't
say
an arc.
It wasn't much. I agree with you.
If you were to say that Melanie and Ashley didn't have much of a character arc, I agree.
They weren't they were side characters.
Because
I think Melanie had a character arc.
I don't think Melanie had a character arc, and I think that the point was that she was already virtuous.
Right.
From the time you meet her, she's very virtuous. She's very mature.
I think that there's a little bit in the middle of the movie that kind of indicates that she may not be as naive and dumb as she has been.
I didn't say naive, virtuous. She doesn't suffer gossip.
No, listen to what I'm saying. I understand that her character at first comes across as naive and kind of like, this is how things need to be. Therefore, that's how I'm going to do them. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In the middle of the movie, when Scarlett shoots the man, you realize she's not blind to the things that are happening around her.
I never once thought she was blind.
Idiota. Can you do a Spanish quack?
El Quacko.
El Quacko.
El Quacko.
Someone's probably mad that I said that.
I think that there is like some change to the character as well. I think that at the end, she knows that the rumors are true, but she also knows that
what rumors?
The rumors that
the rumors weren't true. The
rumor
was that they were having an affair,
and they weren't.
They weren't having
She
an affair.
wanted to. She wanted to
Yes.
get in his goodies.
But
She did.
So-
she
so-
wanted,
She
real
wanted
bad.
him in her goodies.
Oh, they
So here's-
wanted to get both goodies together, put them in a bowl, put chocolate syrup on it, and just share each other's
I
goodies.
just- I don't remember this about the first time I watched this,
Happy
but I
Valentine's Day.
really detested Ashley. Just the worst person.
Oh, in this movie, you were getting angry with
No.
Ashley?
Yes.
I think
No way.
He
I think-
was so piss weak. He was just
No.
the biggest coward.
hold on. Let me defend Ashley. We have to first contextualize the
He's got
society.
a girl's name.
Yeah,
So
he had a girl's name.
He already
right?
has a handicap.
Yeah, it just wasn't fair.
Yeah.
No, considering the culture of the day, he had to be polite. He had to be like, if he had treated her the way he wanted to, it would be much more
Like Rhett Butler
Rhett Butler
style.
of
Cold.
like take off,
Right.
take a hike. He couldn't do that. The culture wouldn't allow him to do that. His own sense of what it means to be a gentleman,
Southern
doesn't allow,
gentleman specifically,
exactly,
yeah.
didn't allow him to do it. In his own words, he said as much. That's why when Scarlett O'Hara later in the movie, when Melanie dies, and she's like, "Why didn't you ever tell me that you loved her?" And it's like, "You idiot! He's said it so many times
Right.
in so many ways, and you refused to listen." The fact that she was so forward with him,
Yes.
and he did nothing.
No,
I
I
think he's
so I
a
don't
hero.
disagree with you that she was deplorable.
Yeah.
I'm saying he also was. The fact that he allowed her to get that close.
He tried to literally
No.
move across the country.
Yes, and when she said no, he just didn't.
No, when his wife told
He
him
said-
that they wouldn't be.
He
Mel
said
was
that
the factor in that.
They couldn't. He couldn't fight them both. But why didn't he just? No, I'm not.
Ashley is not the bad guy in this film. I
Okay,
was
so
reading
the-
I
through
gotta
everyone.
disagree with you there, Jen.
The scene where he's like trying to cut wood but can't because he's kind
Incompetent?
of useless. Like, first of all, he's entirely incompetent.
But I think what was being shown there was the fact that like all of these wealthy society types, they didn't have any hard skills, and now they're forced to live by their own, by the sweat of their brow, and it's going to be a struggle. I think that's what that was
No,
about.
but that isn't even the
That's not what you're
specific.
bringing up?
No, there's the scene where he kisses her.
Yeah.
and
No, she kisses him.
they kiss each other.
She makes the first move.
Okay,
She absolutely
fine.
She makes the
Yes,
first
but
like 20 moves.
Yeah.
But
He
doesn't-
never makes the first
He
move.
doesn't. He doesn't skirt back from that.
Pushed her off of him.
Yes, it eventually happened, but the fact that he let it get that far is piss weak.
I
He's married. He's committed to being
you
married.
know how many
to
girls
her.
I've kissed since I've been married? It's not that big of a deal.
Is it just your wife?
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah.
And your daughter?
And I've kissed my mom a couple times too on the cheek. So that
I
counts.
kissed my mom on the mouth the day that Jen and I got married because I was confused.
Yeah, he was so nervous.
I'm worried about you.
So the thing is that she like walked up behind him.
Here's the funnier thing. My mom's reaction was like, it's okay. Your brother did the same thing.
I saw it happen.
All right, can we pause for a second and just acknowledge this is the second movie we've watched very recently that has that justifies cousin marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I tell you something funny?
Absolutely, always, ever, every day. Yes.
My mother's brother is married to his third cousin.
A third cousin's not a big deal.
Okay.
That doesn't bother me.
Cousin marriage ain't that big of a deal.
Even just first cousins, that doesn't bother you? Genetically, I feel like that could have some ramifications.
It's
It's a little
siblings.
too
That,
close to the gene pool.
it's siblings that genetically is like a concern.
Yeah.
I want to talk for a moment about an unpopular opinion on slavery.
Is this a pro slavery?
No, it's something that this movie actually does touch on, which is that it's inefficient. Slavery is wildly inefficient. One of the biggest,
That's an unpopular opinion?
yes,
So there's a majority of people think slavery is efficient?
yeah. In fact, there's a lot of people that think
Who's out there still going for slavery?
that's the thing. That's the
Who's rooting
crazy
for
thing.
this?
So from the left, you'll hear arguments that
That's me now. Be careful.
from the left, you'll hear arguments that slavery is a necessary result of capitalism because of how efficient it is. And then people on the right who both despise slavery and like capitalism are like, why are you defending slavery? And they're not. They're saying it's a bad thing and that efficiency, it's being chased. When you chase efficiency for its own sake, that's what you result with. However, there's really great cases to be made. Mises has made them, Rothbard's made them, Murphy's made them, that slavery is wildly inefficient. And one of the biggest reasons it's efficient is you don't work as hard when there's no return. When you get rewarded for your labor, you work harder. And so slaves, the reason you need a whip to drive them is because they're going to do the minimum amount. Within the O'Hara household, the black people that stayed on even after they were free people,
all three that we met.
yeah, they were being compensated with room and board. We don't see any sign that they have a salary of any
And
kind.
they stayed around post 65.
Yeah.
So that's the emancipation.
They're family. They were treated as family. And then Big Sam goes with a bunch of free men to dig ditches to fight the Yankees.
Correct.
So there's more to it than just free labor. But compensated labor gets a better return. And that's one of the reasons that Ashley wanted to pay men. It's not just that he dislikes slavery. He's like, no, we need to pay these guys. But paid men get paid. Paid people work harder. They take pride in their work. But then there's also just we don't know how many brilliant minds were stuck on plantations under slavery.
Right.
One of the reasons that the South was so much less wealthy than the North was because so much of the labor of the South had no resources of their own.
And they had no voice. Like, they had no voice to, like,
I don't know. Have you ever heard like a Southern...
Mammy wouldn't shut up.
But they had no ability to speak life into things. Outside, like, they had no platform. I guess what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but I mean,
they
like,
were silenced
if
a
they
lot.
if they had a great idea for, say, a cotton gin, they weren't able to be like, hey, I got this great idea, right?
Because they were silenced.
Right.
Yeah.
When you said they had no voice, I thought like
no Southern gospel.
I thought you meant like self-advocacy, which is true, but like I'm talking just like the pure
ability to
dispassionate economic terms, right? And so the South, even though it had a lot of people, it didn't have a lot of wealth, and wealth is created from labor, but that labor must be compensated for it to create wealth, and so the South was actually quite poor, and then through the war lost a lot of its money. There's also this myth, of course, that wars are good for the economy. Well, we saw with the South that the war destroyed their economy.
Right. No, but you said unpopular opinion. So, like, you still unpopular opinion that. So the popular opinion would be that slavery is beneficial for work or for
that it is efficient.
Okay, so who says that? Who's out there? Like where's the majority of people going? Slavery is efficient.
Yeah.
Like which people are you pointing to? Voices.
Specifics?
Yeah, well, not names, but like what groups of people are going, man, slavery really worked well? Because you're saying popular opinion, which I'm assuming means majority of people.
Yeah.
Okay, so who are, like, what demographic, what political party?
So if you were to ask the average person, not the moral of whether slavery is good or bad, if you were to ask them, was it efficient? A lot of people think that it was very efficient because it was labor that was free. And so it didn't have to be paid back. And so the capitalist class, the slave owner, was able to keep 100% of the profit of the labor.
So just like if you were to do a sidewalk poll and just ask, okay, just that specific thing, not specific. There's not a party going out like saying, hey, like, hey, this work model worked really well. Like, there's not people campaigning for.
And in fact, when they talk about the efficiency of slavery, they're using that, they're intending it as a criticism.
Okay.
They're not saying that slavery was good.
Okay.
They're saying that when you chase efficiency for efficiency's sake, you end up with slavery.
Okay.
But that's actually not the case.
I see what you're saying. It's a weird way to go about that unpopular opinion statement, but yeah.
Well, part of what's
I've never met anyone that's like, yeah, slavery worked out.
Part of what's unpopular about the opinion is if you talk about slavery being inefficient, people will be like, yeah, but also it's really evil. And yes, that's true. But let's talk for a second about it being inefficient.
Not talking about the humanity part of it.
Right.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You're removing the humanity part. You're just going,
talking
the
just
work
purely dispassionately. It is an inefficient way to handle labor. And as
I was waiting for you to drop something big. I'm like, who's campaigning?
No.
But you're just, okay.
And as a result, there are people that argue, because slavery is inefficient, there are people that argue the Civil War wasn't necessary. That this as at the time, I believe the French referred to it as I can't remember, but they had kind of like polite terms to say this gross thing that Southern Americans still do would have disappeared within a generation because it was inefficient. They would have basically worked themselves into poverty because the North, who, even though it was like slavery technically didn't exist, but kind of still remained, was going to be so much more prosperous just because they were making use of those mines through proper compensation.
The Civil War. 1861 to 1865.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked a couple times on a couple different episodes how, like, war, reasons for war, the validity of war, the necessity of war, and just those different topics. As I'm going through, and we were talking how, like, I've started reading a couple years ago, I think it was 2020, I started reading through the American history. In 2025 is a big year for me because I'm going to devote all of 2025 to those 4 years.
Right.
Starting with Lincoln's biography, and then going from there, deep diving into Civil War, and then ending with the end of the Civil War. I'm going to just try to stay within those boundaries. So, anyways, getting all that, was the Civil War, the American Civil War, inevitable?
No.
How so?
There are, to my knowledge, 2 countries that ended slavery by means of violence in this era when a lot of countries abolished slavery. Only 2 of them did it with violence. The U.S. through a civil war and Haiti through a slave revolt. Given that so many countries managed to do it peaceably, non-violently, I don't think it was necessary. I don't think it was inevitable. We know, you and I, and also we as a culture know,
and Jen,
that slavery was just one of many reasons the Civil War was fought. In fact, I think there's a line about that in this movie, which I thought was brilliant. I'd like to read it real quick if I can find it. Most of the miseries of the of the world were caused by wars, and when the wars were over, no one ever knew what they were about. So slavery was just one of many reasons.
We can't acknowledge that, like, slavery was the heaviest reason, but it wasn't. The Civil War wasn't just about slavery.
No, it was also about secession. It was also about
states' rights,
whether it's going to be a gold
state
standard
rule,
or a silver
right.
standard. There was so many aspects.
I feel like
slavery was the catalyst, especially what happened at Harper's Ferry
with James Brown.
Yeah,
get out yourself. I don't even know if that's a lyric of his. I was just trying to impersonate James Brown.
Though.
Yeah. Get up off of that thing.
When you get to the Civil War readings, you should go watch The Good Lord Bird. It's a fun series.
That's a documentary on Big Bird.
Yeah.
Sesame Street.
It's a biopic on James Brown.
Biopic?
Oh, that's right.
Biopic.
So
John Brown.
Slavery was an aspect. There were several. Like with every war, there are always several reasons why it happens.
Right.
I don't think the Civil War was inevitable. I definitely don't think it was necessary.
Oh, definitely not necessary.
I don't buy into a lot of the narrative we hear today that America is heading towards another Civil War. I don't think that another Civil War is necessary. I don't think it's inevitable.
Right.
But I do believe that the next Civil War, if there is another Civil War, again, it will be about a lot of things. We can swap slavery for abortion. We can swap gold and silver standards for CBDCs and cryptocurrencies, and we can swap and keep secession, because secession is going to be another a big reason.
That's always been a topic of conversation.
So, but I think the way that the Civil War could have been avoided, was by allowing these countries to secede, as was their constitutional right. Now, that does mean that it would have allowed these countries these states, as now independent sovereign countries, to continue to have slavery. I believe that the tradition of slavery in those places would have disappeared within a couple generations, just because of the economics of it, and because of the changing perspective of the population. I also think that because we fought a war over it, it set back our country many, 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 many years on the progress that was being made of reconciling some of the strife and conflict between the black and white populations.
This may be an obvious question to some, or an obvious answer to some, but I don't know the answer to this. The Mayflower was what, the 1400s? The Mayflower was 1400s?
I think it's
14 was Christopher Columbus.
1492 is
when was the Mayflower? 15s? I don't know. Okay.
I just know that spring showers bring them.
When we came over on the Mayflower, was slavery a part of the traditions of the Pilgrims at the time?
No.
When did slavery become a thing for what is now called the United States of America, the land at which we live on now? Like, when did slavery become a thing? So if it wasn't a lifestyle that was brought over from Europe when we came over, what was it? And did slavery start in the South and move its way north?
I think it was 2019 was when they published the 1619
No, slavery existed way before 2019.
The 1619 Project,
right?
And that makes the argument that that the very first colonists had slaves, and that it's an essential part of American history. It's not entirely true. In fact, it's been pretty well rebutted, and that author is pretty well disgraced, and there were a lot of redactions and all this kinds of stuff. Is it true that there was slavery early on in American history? Yes, that is true.
And slavery is not, like, in all history, and slavery goes all the way back to biblical times. So slavery has always been a thing, but specifically the introduction to what is now America.
Yeah.
Shortly, I have a point to all this.
It wasn't long after the colonists arrived that slaves were here as well.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can look up when the first slave ship was. in America.
I wonder if that. I'm curious what the answer is because now I wonder if that coincides with something I'm reading. Let's see what he says.
The first Africans in Virginia, so that would be the first of the American colonies, was in 1619, but it was not the first slaves in North America. The Dutch had them much earlier. So basically, as soon as Europeans got here, because Europeans were quite fond of slavery, they brought slavery with them. But also, that ignores the question of where were the Europeans getting their slaves, and they were buying them at African slave auctions, where Africans were enslaving other Africans.
Right.
So this is not a. I know I don't need to tell you this, Jeff, but this is not a white European problem. This is a human problem.
Right. So the reason I was asking, kind of vetting these questions ahead.
Yeah.
So I'm going through American history via books, biographies of presidents and stuff, and then some other added literature. And at least at the start of our revolution, the start of our revelry against Europe.
Yeah.
Slavery has always been. It was a hot topic in the 1700s. And it was a hot topic before the Civil War, and it was a hot topic after.
Actually, I can answer your question about slavery in America. Predates the colonists. Actually, it predates Europeans.
Okay.
Because Native Americans were enslaving each other
In the same type of way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like chattel slavery. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because as a child growing up, Civil War was slavery. As you get a little older, you realize, okay, no, it was more political than that. There was way more to it, like we just discussed.
Right.
But as I'm reading these things, it's like slavery. Slavery had a huge weight on things from the very beginning in the 1700s. I'm not redacting my personal opinion about the fact that slavery was the reason for the Civil War, but I do feel it was the tipping point. I would definitely give it that title. Man, I can't talk. I would give it that title, but I'd also say it was probably the most weighted position because the South was fighting for their own right to govern themselves. And we talked about how the South, their money was within the cotton fields, the cotton gin, and the slaves that were pulling the cotton, picking the cotton. The slaves, if the South would be like, okay, if we can have states' rights, but we give up slavery, the South would still lose. Because for them, that was their whole model of living was based on slave living, slave lifestyle. And so I'm feeling more and more of the weight of slavery than I kind of was a couple years ago going into this. What was the reason for slavery?
To clarify your position there, that so your statement.
I'm not pro-slavery.
I know. I want to say it back to you.
Say it back
make sure that I understood it.
Okay. Maybe
your claim was that if the South had been allowed to secede on the condition that they abolished slavery, the South still would have failed.
I think they would have struggled.
Okay.
Maybe not failed, but immediately, if that was the theoretical way that it played out, and they said, okay, if we can have our own rights, but we have to secede, we have to abolish slavery, they would have to relearn how they function. I think they would have struggled economically for a very long time until they found just because that was their. Now the North was already reinstating that type of thing. I can't imagine it would have been an easy transition, even if there was no war and they agreed on things and they abolished slavery. I feel like that would still have been difficult for the South.
It still would have been difficult for the South, but the way it would have transitioned is that these now free men are still the experts on their craft, and so then they're going to be compensated for it. So plantation,
assuming everyone played by the rules, which we did,
right.
We even didn't see that at the end of the Civil War.
Right, and of course, I think we've talked about this before. But the Emancipation Proclamation didn't free a single person. It only applied to rebel states, and the rebel states didn't care, right? So it didn't actually free anybody. It
was a rally speech.
It sounded good. It looked good on paper. It was good politics. But all the northern slaves continued to be northern slaves, right? It didn't free them. And so I think you're right. There would have been a struggle in the short term, but I think that they would have. I think that our country. I think the South would all be much more profitable, even if they had been fully allowed to secede or unconditional secession, which is what they should have been allowed to do. Even with unconditional secession, I think we would have seen slavery disappear shortly after.
So yeah, I just because we've talked many times, I'm not a fan of any type of war, and obviously this is the biggest loss of American casualties in any war to date.
That's right.
Even combined, you combined a lot of our big wars. We lost over 800,000 people in the Civil War alone, and just.
The last war we had was World War II.
Yeah, legal war. Yeah. I'm learning, Nelson. I can be trained. But it's
call me Pavlov.
I just because right now I'm in the John Tyler book, which John Tyler has met. He's the 9th president. No, 10th president. He's the 10th president. John Tyler has met Lincoln. So I'm in the stage of where Lincoln's starting to make himself known but I'm still in the 1840s versus the 60s.
Yeah.
So like, but even in the 1700s, like there's not a single book that's gone by that hasn't mentioned the power of slavery, the weight of slavery, the weight, whether it was
an albatross on their
right.
neck.
Like, it's like, I feel like because it was such a heavy topic and because the nation was legitimately divided, I think it was inevitable. Like I would love to theoretically have been like, okay, yeah, let's come up with like, let's find a solution. But like, because it was so heated, I don't think we could have avoided the Civil War. I think it like, I can't think of a way where like they would have played their cards right. Like Jefferson Davis was not a team playing man.
Here's where I come back to why it was avoidable, why it's not really about slavery, or at least certainly not exclusively about slavery.
And it's not exclusive. Like I will agree, it's not
exclusively about slavery. And correct. I would say it wasn't even about slavery. That's historical revisionism. And the biggest reason I think that we can point to is we look at the life, the writings, the speakings of then President Abraham Lincoln. He was
former President Abraham.
He was by no means an abolitionist. He had very little positive to say about black people. He had slaves himself. He was not an abolitionist, not by the standards of a fellow abolitionist of his day, certainly, right?
He was a politician.
And one of the big sparking points, besides Harper's Ferry, was the fact that he was from the North. That's part of what the South really didn't like, and why they wanted to secede, is that he was, if I'm not mistaken, the first elected president who was not a Southerner.
No, that's not correct.
Okay. What am I missing?
I gotta get my list out. There was a streak of, so I'm on President 10. Just within, so Lincoln's President 16. I'm on President 10. And within even the first 10, Washington was Virginia, Jefferson was Virginia, Adams. I'm sorry. It was Washington, Adams, Jefferson. Adams was New York. Jefferson was Virginia. Madison was Virginia.
Is Virginia considered North or South in the Civil War?
South. West Virginia was on the border.
Right.
West Virginia, Kentucky, and there was another state were border, and they were right there in the middle. Like some people would be like, no, they were Southern state, and then some people from would be like, no,
parts of Southern Ohio.
So Virginia,
the South.
Virginia was the South. Yeah. West Virginia was the North. Was a middle.
Right,
state.
yeah.
So Virginia was the South.
Okay.
But we've had in at least the first 10, we've had some presidents from New York.
Okay.
So this new state of New York.
I can't remember where I read this, and so I can't even reference the book. But I remember.
And Lincoln's from Chicago.
That's the North.
Right. So I guess you're saying okay. Well, what was your statement?
The claim that I had read was that one of the big reasons that the Southern states wanted to secede was not over slavery, but that they had lost some of the power they had in electoral politics, and were mad that a Northerner had been elected. Had there recently been a string of Southerners elected?
Let's take a look.
If only there was somewhere we could.
It's impossible to know for sure, right?
Find this information.
Oh, hey, Jen, you're still here.
Yep. It just felt like I was listening to another episode.
George Washington, Virginia. I'll just do the first 10 because that's where George Washington, Virginia. John Adams, Massachusetts. So south, north, south, 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 north, south, north, south, south.
What about party affiliation?
Parties varied, especially early on.
Right, because I know that Abraham Lincoln being a Republican was a issue for the Southern Dixiecrats.
No, and I have not delved. It's like I'm coming at this not. I haven't spent my year into Civil War yet. I don't know. I'm going to look this up. The South had their own president.
Yes,
Jefferson Davis.
Yes, that was
which he's not mentioned at all in this movie.
Yes, he is.
They mention his name.
Mm-hmm.
Did they?
They mention it when at the barbecue at 10 Oaks.
Okay,
Oaks.
right at the beginning.
At the end of the barbecue, when they're all yippieing and running out the words because Davis is called for his men.
Oh, okay. I see. In office. Oh, I see. Okay. He was elected in the office after the Civil War started.
That's right.
Okay. I didn't know if he was established already before the Civil War started. No, they brought him into office once.
Yeah,
okay.
When the Southern states were refused their right to secede, they confederated, which means a federation for a specific limited purpose. Okay. And they
I'll read a biography about him too when I get to this.
Nice.
So yeah, where was I going with that? So
it's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, you were talking about how one of the reasons was because they didn't want to North. Now I watched a video before we recorded this. Lincoln wasn't even on a lot of the ballots in the South. So if you looked at
I can see that being a reason for them to be frustrated and want to leave the Union.
1861.
Talk about lack of representation.
61 voting results, election results. 1860 United States. See if there's a graphic. Yeah, it was just the South wasn't well represented when it came to elections thus far.
Yeah.
The North definitely had weight to that. Even and if it wasn't the North, it was the founding states. Like
Sure,
it was the New England states,
Yes.
which Virginia's not a part. Virginia would not have been a part of.
Yeah, I think they should have seceded. I think they should have been allowed to secede. I think our country would have been better for it.
We would look drastically different.
We
today.
would. I think we're likely to see another big secession movement come.
Texas has always threatened to secede.
Texas has it.
Is it possible? Like how likely is it that we'll see it happen?
Robert
What's the
P.
logistics?
Murphy, the
RPM. Yeah.
I've referenced him several times before. I want to have him on the show eventually. He's written quite a bit about how he's not even a Texan, but he's just written about the practicalities of it, of how a Texas secession movement could work. I think our country would be better for it. I think our scale and scope doesn't make sense. I think that the states are so named because they are supposed to be independent states, countries, and that the federal union of those states is supposed to be a voluntary thing. And I think that it's gone way beyond what any of the states first envisioned for it. And I think that it's, to quote the Declaration of Independence,
No, we don't do that here.
when a government no longer represents its people, it's incumbent on its people to change that. So I think it can be done peacefully. I think we've seen plenty of cases throughout history of peaceful secession, and there's no reason that we can't do the same.
Yeah. So that's my little 2 cents, just a little jaunt into history and stuff, and just curious what would have happened if the Civil War didn't, and versus, was it avoidable? Was it just,
Yeah,
it wasn't great either way.
No.
It was brother versus brother. Most people listening probably know, it was not pretty.
slavery
It
is an absolutely horrific thing that I'm glad has been abolished. I think it's tragic that they felt it necessary to kill each other over it. But I also respect people like John Brown, who was so horrified by it that he was willing to be violent. It challenges my own, my own opinions of the things that I claim to be are abhorrent, yet I tolerate in deed by doing nothing about them.
Like what?
Taxation, abortion, forced education, etc., etc.
I think you're doing something about that last.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what do you got? What do you guys got? What's some other things? It's a long movie.
There's so much more to talk about in this movie too, because we've talked about stuff that is historically relevant, but not actually within the biases of the movie.
Yeah.
I have some stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. At the very beginning. So I started watching these movies and I'm like, okay, I'm going to write things down because I'm excited to do this. And suddenly I started watching the movie and I was like, I don't know anything about anything. I have no biases, nothing, anything. And I freaked out a little bit. And so I had to take a break. But in the first 5 minutes of the movie, what's the dad called?
Paul.
Mr. O'Hara. He says to Scarlett, what does it matter who you marry as long as he's a Southerner and thinks like you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't necessarily agree with all of it, but there's definitely parts of that I agree with. I think that it's important for people who are going to be spending their life together to have similar belief systems.
Like-mindedness.
Yeah.
Well, we take it on a faith way. That's the Bible says, do not be unequally yoked.
Mm-hmm.
And just the basic breakdown of that verse is the yoke is something you'd put around the head of 2 oxen as they pull the plow. And if you have a big oxen, which was my nickname in high school, and then you got a little oxen, which was Nelson's nickname in high school. Oddly enough, we went to different high schools. The plow wouldn't function.
They kept us at different schools, so the school wouldn't be unequally yoked.
As far as the Southerner thing, I don't think that applies.
But I think it's a good thing to think of. You don't want to marry someone or date, even for instance, we've all talked, I never dated. Lindsay was always been, it's Valentine's, I guess I can talk about this. Lindsay was my first girlfriend, legitimate girlfriend.
Aww.
And last one.
And last one so far, yeah.
So there's one in the middle.
I never dated. And but if I were to my parents instilled in me the value of if you're going to date, and date with intention.
Yeah.
Dating is not a hobby. Dating is not something you go do to have a good time. If you're dating, you're going to.
There should be no fun involved.
No fun. Serious. My parents were, man, they were tough. Dating should be something taken seriously. So I think I agree with it. I'm not necessarily
I think that is an unpopular opinion nowadays.
Well, oh yeah, definitely nowadays. Yeah, absolutely.
I think that
that's not woke enough for people.
Right. I think people are they admire relationships where 2 drastically different points of view collide. Right.
Mm.
My parents were unequally yoked. my father was not a believer when my parents were married. He became a believer in
And
that
then I saw her
5 year
face.
period that I told you that they lived in the States. That's
Right.
when my father became a believer.
So America.
I think hardship is the answer there.
America.
Um, but when it came time to decide how the kids were going to be brought up, my dad deferred to my mom. But what if he hadn't?
Mm.
Right? What if he had been like, no, we're not going to indoctrinate our children in this stuff, right?
Mm.
So I think it is important for people to believe similar things. And you said people should be intentional about who they date.
Yeah.
When Nelson first started showing interest,
Hitting you in the chest.
hitting on me.
Oh, accidentally.
Listen, if I knew that where that was going to end me up, I would have done it twice as hard.
When he started showing like actual intention in dating, I was very clear to him, with him, that I was not interested in dating unless the end result was marriage.
I called her bluff, and here we are.
How many years?
37.
How many years have we been married?
11 years, but it feels like 11 seconds.
Great
No,
answer.
Oh, that's a joke.
Great answer, Nils.
Hold on. Pause to reissue punchline. 11 years, but it feels like 11 minutes.
Underwater.
Because you drowned. Hit it?
I can hold my breath for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. But I
You
was
guys-
very
are you
clear
guys
with
okay?
Nelson from the very beginning. At least for me, I was trying to be very intentional. And it worked.
You guys were 20s? So what was your age?
We were married
1820s.
when we got
When you met, how old were you?
I was 21 and Nelson was
Okay.
18.
Okay. Yeah,
Don't be alarmed. It worked out
because
again.
like I agree with that perspective. Like, and I think that's I love that about you guys. Like, Lindsay and I started dating in high school. I was 16, and although that was that movie's on the top 250.
It's not.
Sound of Music is absolutely on the top 250
Oh, why didn't we do that movie?
Because you picked this movie.
because you are pro-Nazi. I'm just kidding. No,
we like the South
come
and we
back.
like the Nazis.
Maybe Lindsay will come back for that
We're
one.
always picking losers.
Fingers crossed. No, I was raised with the like I was also a very immature 16-year-old. So like I don't know if I'm pro. Hey, just because I came from a high school relationship that worked, I don't think I would ever speak that into existence to high schoolers. I would definitely say be very cautious in high school because you're still immature in high school.
I usually tell high schoolers not to date at all.
Right. And that would normally be my perspective. But like, I don't feel comfortable telling them that being
Why?
that Lindsay and I are very successful and we both started dating in high school.
I
Yeah.
tell people not
It's
to
like-
date until
it's
they're
like-
20, and I was dating when I was 18.
Right. But like,
He was married. when he was
we're
18.
the exact
I mean,
antithesis of what I would be telling kids is like, don't date in high school. It doesn't work. Except it did for us. And we're very, happy.
I
Like,
don't say don't do it because it doesn't work. I say don't do it because it's unwise.
I would agree with that, but
You
I
feel
would-
like it's too.
I feel like I can't say that because like, I'm very happy Lindsay and I started like,
Watch how easy it is. Watch. I'm about to do it.
okay,
don't
Don't date in high school. It's unwise.
slower,
how easy it is?
slower. Dude,
I did it.
So,
it
so
doesn't,
something that I like to tell teenagers,
Just words.
just because when I was a teenager,
Don't date
I
till
felt
you're married.
invincible. Like if the majority of people had a specific outcome, I would always.
do you mean Pacific?
No.
Like the ocean?
Atlantic.
Atlantic.
If people in a specific situation had a specific outcome,
Take 74.
I literally don't even know what I was going to say now.
If people in a specific situation had a specific outcome, you would say it's because of those people, not because of the situation. And so when you find yourself in those same situations, you're like, yeah, well, that's not going to happen to me because I'm not them. I'm me.
Right. When there's like
You guys are too.
I speak Jen.
he said it in a different way that I was going to say it. And I didn't quite like what he said, but I'm going to try and rephrase it. If the majority of the population encountered one outcome, a teenager would think, but there is another part of the population that is smaller that didn't have that outcome. Therefore, you're telling me there's a chance,
Nice.
right? So most teenagers have that point of view. And again, this is a general statement. Not
Right.
all teenagers are going to have that point of view.
Right.
Every single one of them.
But it's important to remind them that the majority is the majority because most people fall into it,
Mhm.
right? And if they live their life thinking that they're going to be in the minority, they're already at a disadvantage.
Mhm.
So even though you are in the minority,
I'm a minority?
yeah, in the fact that
Oh, that changes this movie for me. I relate.
I'm allowed to have much more controversial opinions now.
You guys just don't understand what I went through.
I certainly
my
don't.
hardships.
My first relationship was shambles.
You don't know what it's like.
But no, I get what you're saying. I just there is I do feel contradictory when I say like because I do
worked for
believe
me, but don't do it yourself.
Exactly, and I do deeply believe deep down. It's like I was not fit to
Maybe
date
bring
in
it
high
from the
school.
perspective of, it wasn't an easy thing. It was countercultural.
Oh, I was really easy. Wait, is that what that was a different thing? Sorry. You're right. Like it's
countercultural, right?
Yeah. But yeah, it's
Even
now there is now. Okay, now to counter the counterculturals, like I went to a youth conference back in my days of youth ministry. It was
Wednesday.
No, it was an actual. I'm trying to think of the name of the
It was an
company that did
actual
it.
youth
And we were in
ministry
Columbus.
event.
It was a conference for youth leaders, not for students. It was workshops and stuff. And one of the sermons, lectures was about. This was probably 2013, 2014, 2015. So a little time's passed since. One of the lectures was about the idea of adolescence versus how our bodies are physically moving and advancing in time.
Okay.
So the concept was, we as a society, Western civilization, America, are in general, and again, this was a couple years ago, so maybe things have shifted a little bit, but this is, in general, we're communicating to, before you settle down, accomplish these specific goals.
Yeah.
And we as a society are continually pushing that goal back. Graduate high school, graduate college, get a career, get a house. Like all these things are kind of becoming, so this was this thing. But at the same time, physically and genetically and scientifically, bodies of children, prepubescent going into puberty, are advancing quicker. Yes. Something's happening something's in the water, but like over time.
All right, Alex Jones.
Over time, like girls are maturing younger, and females and males are maturing younger and becoming sexually ready younger. Yeah. So we're getting this in this is before they even put the faith aspect into it. So you've got society going, wait until you accomplish goals to settle down, not to have fun. Yeah. Like obviously America's saying have fun whenever you want, live it up, but to settle down, wait.
Yeah.
But our bodies are going, no, we're ready now.
Yeah.
Okay. Then churches throw in the faith thing. Wait till you get married to have sex. Wait till you get married for sexual activity, which I agree with. I think, a lot of damage can be done doing stuff like that pre-marriage. There's a frustratingly big gap there between sexual maturity in both genders and the ability to go, okay, now I can do what I'm designed to do. I can do what I've been designed to do for 10 years now. Like now we're going 15 years. Like
the tidal wave of everything that is being thrown at young kids right now that will throw them into the depths of temptation.
Yeah. And so and they didn't really come up with a solution. Because like they presented just this idea of like, this is what students are going through. Society's telling them to wait to settle down. The church is telling them to don't have sex until you settle down. And their bodies are going, we've been ready since junior high, baby. Let's do this. And it's just, and that gap's growing. And so I can't remember why this specific topic started, but just like, that's a hard place to be in a student. Oh, we're talking about teenage dating. And so in high school, there's just a lot of temptations.
Oh yeah.
And coming from a faith perspective, which the three of it, that's a hard place to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that gap's I think that high school's even gotten harder for that perspective than it has when we were back in high school. And
do you want to know what I think the solution is?
Yes.
Okay. If you don't want to know, I won't tell you.
I think I know where you're going with this, but I want to hear it.
I think the solution is to educate your children. No, now specifically, don't let other people educate your own children.
Educating doesn't change your urges.
No, it doesn't.
And that's what I'm talking about. Impulsives.
But having having information,
education can't overcome impulses.
Having the right kind of information can change the decisions that you make.
Jen said something earlier that reminded me of a meme I saw about a week ago that I think is very relevant to the conversation at hand. This meme I think is funny because of how it ends.
I see what you mean.
But there is some sexist overtone to it. That's not what I thought was funny though. The average height for women is 5'4". Yeah, but I'm 5'8" though. This is all arguments with women. So that's the original post. To which a woman responds, I'm a woman and I don't do this though. What's funny to me about this is not that she's a woman and she's doing exactly the thing. It's just that when we shift from the general to the specific, it's almost always because of a person. We feel personally targeted by the general, right? Or we're uncomfortable with the general statement.
Call it 1-800-GENERAL now. Sponsor of the episode.
I'm in a structured settlement and I need cash now. So, Jen, when she was in high school, she was seeing these situations around her and she was like, yeah, but not me. It's not going to happen to me. I'm a woman and I don't do this though, right? And that kind of goes into all these different situations where just because in specific situations the general rule doesn't apply does not mean that the general rule isn't good, right? So, for example, in the Old Testament, it says, don't steal. It also says, however, if you have to provide for your family and you can't, it is okay to steal food. But if you're caught, you will pay sevenfold, right? So what's it actually saying there? It's saying, yeah, we have this general rule. We also have specific rules. The general rule still applies. The general rule is still good. So yeah, just because there's specifics that might, change it, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still pay attention to these general truths.
Right.
And so what Jen's talking about here about, educating your kids. Yeah, urges and education are different things. But if you're the one educating your kids, you have a little bit more control about what they're being educated on these urges. If they're being educated that these urges are good and natural and that all urges are essentially the same and do whatever urges feel right, that might not be the way you want to educate your kids about these urges. But when you abdicate the right to educate your kids, when you abdicate the responsibility to educate your kids on these things, you also lose the right to be the most important voice on these things with your kids. And I think that's...
Yeah. Something that I've learned as a parent is something called the law of first mention, which is this idea where the first time you hear about a topic, that's going to be your biggest interpretation of that thing. So let's say premarital sex. If your child hears about sex not from you, it's either going to be sex ed or it's going to be another prepubescent teen or prepubescent person talking about it. An uneducated, uninformed person.
Or perhaps a very informed, educated person, but still
not you.
Not you.
It is important to get to those things first and educate your children on these things. That's the approach we've taken with our daughter, who is currently 9. And I've tried to be as open as I can whenever she asks me questions about my life before I met Nelson, including
mostly
all of the
great and sad.
Did you know, Jeff?
Oh, I see what you did, Nelson.
Did you know that the entire universe revolves around Nelson?
It's true.
Yeah. We've done a lot of episodes.
Pretty great feeling.
Yeah. The previous 54 episodes go deeply into that. Yeah.
Okay. Whenever she asks me questions, I try to be open and I try to be clear. And you can talk to your kids about these things.
Yeah.
You cannot talk to your kids.
You can talk to your kids about.
I'm telling Lindsay right now that we are able to do this. She can
go wake her up now.
I agree. Oh, Lindsay's up. Yeah.
No.
No, wake up your daughter.
Your daughter.
Go wake up your daughter.
There's a good chance she's actually up still too.
But no, that there's ways of speaking to your kids that are age appropriate. You can they can know the mechanics of what it entails without knowing the depths of meaning behind it, right? Like one day Sophie came up to me and she said, if intimacy, that's
gross.
Well, I thought you were going to say one day she came up to you and said, can humans have sex with cats?
Yes, she did. She did ask me that one.
I'd love to see a prepubescent child's answer to that one.
She asked me if when humans have sex, the outcome is a child, why do humans have sex if they don't want to have a child? And I was like, that's a great question. That's a great
cardio.
Huh?
Cardio.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great exercise, honey.
A workout.
It indicated to me that she was ready to learn more about it, to learn a deeper.
She's complexly thinking about.
Yeah.
Like, she's not just thinking of the topical things. Like she's wait, if this means this, then what does this mean?
I know what it is. I know how it happens. I know what the outcome is. But I never talked to her about anything else, right? And so now you understand that there are people doing it that don't want to do it.
And doing it well.
And so it opened the opportunity for me to be able to speak to her about the reason behind that, right?
Right.
And then when she asked me about relationships that I'd had before I met Nelson, and I spoke to her freely about it, her response to me was, well, that was stupid of you. Like, why didn't you end that relationship sooner, right? And I'm happy that that's her outcome. That's the conclusion that she came to, because maybe this will allow her to have make an informed decision when it's her turn to make those decisions.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think the church's perspective, though, because the church will inevitably have a voice about what they think. Like, okay, so like, do you guys think the church shouldn't in youth groups and stuff, should youth groups have the discussion on sex? Do you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Limited.
Okay.
I think that the church should not be shying away from this, but it needs
only
to
for them to
parents.
do that after the parents have talked to students.
Well, I think it's parents have the responsibility that they need to be having these conversations before schools and churches are.
Yeah.
Right.
So if your kids are at the age where the church is like, hey, it's now appropriate for us to have this conversation, and you as a parent haven't already had that conversation with your kid, you as a parent have screwed up. So churches, I think, have a responsibility to play in this conversation as well.
Yeah.
But
maybe not directly with the kids themselves, but with the entire family. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So you said Scarlett O'Hara was 16 at the beginning of this movie.
Yeah.
And this movie flashes 12 years into the future,
and
so she was 28 by the end of the movie.
12 years into the future.
The book, so how accurate is it to the book? Because the book spans 12 years of life.
Are you sure about that?
According to the one review of the book I read, yes.
Okay.
Now I could be wrong.
I looked it up and it read that it spanned decades, plural.
Okay. So maybe the movie spans 12 years and the book spans more.
Well,
all I know is the book she has way more partners.
So the book,
and I thought it was 12 years.
So the movie's at the end of the Civil War, she's 20.
Right.
It was 4 years, and she was 16 at the time.
Right.
20. Then it looks to be several years before she has her first kid.
Right.
And then her kid's got to have been
5 or 6 at least when she has her accident.
So it's got to be at least 10 years plus those years in between. So I'd say you're looking at least 15 years.
Okay. She's still young then at the end of the movie. She's still got a whole life ahead of her.
Yeah. And it never tells us how old Red is in the book or in the movie.
During the time span of the novel, it was from 1861 to 1873.
12 years.
12 years.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. The review that I had read was incorrect.
The movie is probably 12 years then. Oh, close to it. Because the movie, outside of omitting more of
her sexual escapades.
Yeah.
Sexcapades.
It does follow pretty directly.
So,
according to the review I read. Not from experience of the book. I will not. Go ahead.
Another thing that I really liked about this movie is it shows how the dynamics of different relationships. So like her relationship with her dad, her relationship with her mom, her relationship with Mammy, her relationship with Rhett's relationship with other people. I really like how it dives into those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, outside of her relationship with her parents, everything else is self-seeking. I'm still on the boat that she doesn't change. But yes, the interaction with her parents is different and is a little bit more parent-child interaction. But everything else with Scarlett O'Hara is the same. Self-seeking.
I want to push back on the self-seeking
thing
a bit because
I'm open to it.
We've talked about this when we did our Klaus episode about objectivism, where Ayn Rand would claim that everybody is ultimately in all actions self-seeking. And everybody in this movie, if you want to boil it down that much, everybody in this movie, everything they do is self-seeking.
Well, Rhett Butler was obviously making choices for Bonnie.
But why?
And he was also making choices for Scarlett and stuff like that.
Let me make the claim of self-seeking.
Okay.
All right. He thought that it would be the absolute best for his life if he had Bonnie in such a situation that she could be in the aristocracy of Atlanta. So it was self-seeking. He thought the best situation for his life is to make Scarlett O'Hara a happy woman for the rest of her life. It was self-seeking, right? Like, yes. And the reason I'm boiling it down to that is because if you want to say she was still self-seeking, while that's true, it's so reductive that it misses a lot of what's actually going on there. Right? Like even Melanie is self-seeking, right? Because what does she want? She wants to have close relationship with Scarlett and with all these other people.
But like if first of all, I appreciate that you guys have an optimistic perspective of this movie because like I went into it a second time hoping that I could find something redeemable from it. I personally couldn't. I do enjoy talking to people who have a positive outcome, and that's sincere. Like Scarlett started out as selfish, flirt, immature.
Yep.
By the end of it, she's a motivated, selfish. Like she may have grown, but it wasn't a positive growth. It wasn't a broadening your horizons. It wasn't a expanding your reach growth. It was a learning how to manipulate better growth. And by the end, she's still the villain with a new motive, with a new goal in mind. So like, it's just like, yeah, she may have transitioned over the 12 years, but like she circled the same goal the whole movie. So she may have had movement. She may have grown, but she is the same person at the beginning that she was at the end. She just changed what her eyes were set on.
Okay.
At the very beginning of the movie, she has a conversation with her father because her father is trying to explain to her that while she might not love Tara yet, ultimately it will be the thing that she loves most. The
because
movie ends with the thing that she loves most is Tara, because land is the one thing.
is the only thing worth fighting for, worth dying for, because it's the only thing that lasts.
So even just there, she has an arc. Even if you want to boil it down to simply she learns to appreciate the land that she grew up on, that's an arc. There's a lot of arcs she has. Does she have great, like, is it this dramatic, like, Scrooge arc? No.
Grinch.
No.
It's
But those are kind of pretty, like, overly dramatic and overly sensationalized types of arcs. Most character arcs are a little bit more nuanced. I agree that at the end of the movie, she's still not a good person.
right.
Like,
And it
Yeah.
took 4 hours for us to get to the fact that she's just like, oh, Ashley really doesn't love me. Okay,
So-
I'll just go back home and get my like.
right, and,
like,
that's part of, like,
but
she's the main character, but she's not the hero.
so what's
Right.
the value in the 4 hours of this movie? I guess that's what like
The
she-
periphery stuff that's happening around her.
okay, like what?
So,
like what do I?
all
what
the
can-
virtuous people in the movie are the secondary characters.
Okay, so the point I was coming to was that I think that Rhett is an exceptionally well written character, because every time that something
But
would happen
not
in the
super
movie,
well acted, I think.
maybe not,
Clark Gable's just okay.
None of
but
the acting in this movie.
I think
but
Hattie
every
was
time
excellent.
that I would think something that was like, oh, this is kind of like hokey, Rhett would say it out loud, right? Whenever she was acting spoiled, he would call her out on it. And so I think that he was an exceptionally well written character. I think he was very self aware of his own flaws. I still didn't like him. I still think that he was a deplorable person.
I liked him.
I like that he spoke his mind and he
like
called
him.
Scarlett out on her BS,
Yeah.
but for some reason was still infatuated with her.
Yeah.
Whether or
at
not he
first-
didn't really love her at
So-
the beginning,
so
he
here's-
was still infatuated. with her.
fascinated.
Here's
by her.
another
Yeah.
here's another relational
Like,
thing
that shows
I,
some immaturity.
I believe.
No.
I believe that
To pursue someone that you know is like, yeah, like there's some like he knows she's not unhealthy, but yeah, every time he's like, okay, I'll help you. Like he knows what he's getting into, and every time he's willing to
But
dive in. Like
he's fascinated and entertained by her.
at first.
enough to unhealthily start a family and have
Right,
a child with
but,
her. All knowing that that's always like that was always a volatile
That's-
situation.
That's like my biggest thing with him is that he goes into the relationship knowing
yeah,
and then still gets angry at her.
yeah,
And that upset me.
Yeah.
Because last time when the movie gets to the frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn,
the
I was
best
like,
part
yes!
of the movie. Right before,
Yes!
right before the credits
But
roll.
this time I watched that and I was like, you knew what you were getting into.
Right.
Why are you
Well,
upset at
he
her?
says to her in the scene where he proposes, he says, God help the man that falls in love with you.
Yeah.
Right? Because he knows that she's going to be
So-
a trifling woman.
Okay,
Now,
so now we've canceled out Rhett as a character we can pull something from.
There's-
Like,
there's-
no.
like,
No.
oh, there's nothing to gain
okay,
from
so
Rhett's
there's
value.
nothing to be learned from people who are tragic characters?
There is, but if we're talking about a movie that like I don't
Okay,
like Rhett, I
hold
don't
on,
like
hold on.
Scarlett.
I
don't
have
like-
to call because throughout Children of Heaven, you didn't like it because it was too positive, and now we have characters that we're supposed to learn from because they are tragic characters, and you're like, oh, I can't learn anything from them because they're tragic characters. I feel like that's just an absurd standard. So which is it? Do we learn from positive characters or do we learn from tragic characters?
Oh, okay. I didn't say we couldn't learn from him. I'm saying as the movie stands, the value in this movie is not there. Like, yeah, I can learn from a pile of poop on the sidewalk.
So I will say I
Like,
think
so. Yeah, I can learn from Children of Heaven. I can learn from this movie. I can learn from Clockwork Orange, and I have. That doesn't mean there's value in it. There's not value in poop on the sidewalk.
This
but I can
movie that
probably
you dislike
pull
so
some
much, you gave it
information from
2.5 stars out of 5.
Yes.
Why?
The only reason I put it above, and let me bring up the movies that it's above for
But
me.
you gave it 2.5 stars
Yes,
for the
I-
same reason that you give every movie you dislike at least 2.5 stars, because despite it, you can find value in it. That's the thing that you always say.
Can I? You want me to answer now, or are you still?
I was a rhetorical question to point
Oh,
out.
it was rhetorical. Okay, so
The
you don't want
point-
my answer. Okay,
I don't need your answer.
I won't answer.
I
Then.
don't
Okay.
need your answer because
All right.
the reason you always give it at least 2.5 stars is because despite what your feelings about it, there's always something of value in it. That's something that you've said tons of times before when
Yes.
we've discussed the way you rate movies.
Yes.
And you didn't like Children of Heaven because it was too
On the nose.
on the nose.
It was-
You didn't like this one because the main characters were dislikable characters who were tragic characters in their lack of growth. I'm really struggling to understand what it is that you're looking for in a movie.
I want superheroes.
No, that's not true.
Is it because there wasn't a watermelon that got smashed with a hammer? You need a Gallagher?
No, I've actually never watched Gallagher. My parents like
can
Gallagher.
can I finish saying what I was going to say
Absolutely
about
not.
Rhett?
Women should be seen and not heard.
For once, we agree. No, I'm just kidding. That's why I told Lindsay, don't come on this episode.
Nelson, I have cooked all 4 of your meals today.
I've only had one.
That means
That's
there's
not my
3 meals at home waiting for you.
There's definitely one part of the movie that I had a really big problem with, which is where he 100% takes advantage of her, and she is delighted the next morning.
Yeah.
I hated.
He
hated that.
drunkenly rapes her.
It was marital rape.
But
then by the end, she was okay with it.
Again, this is something that shows us so much about who she is, right? Throughout the movie, through the story, she is just awful to everybody that dotes on her, but she also wants them to dote on her. And as soon as somebody shows her, somebody is actually domineering and controlling with her, she realizes, oh, this is the thing that I've actually always wanted to begin with. I want somebody to actually pursue and want me that much. Now, is it a really gross and weird story? Yeah, I did not like it at all. But it reveals how corrupt she is inside, how broken she is.
Right. Well, yes. So first of all, to answer your question, I don't know what I'm looking for in movies. All I know is by the end of the movie, if I either enjoyed it or I didn't.
I really tried, honey, to move it along.
No, I'm glad you brought it back.
I can't. Yeah, I can't let this go.
What?
Like it was open ended. I had to finish this. Like I'm fine over time. Like I know. Like this is a movie.
Yeah.
First and foremost, is a movie. I was not entertained.
Okay.
The whole time I'm frustrated. Now, granted, like I was not entertained with Children of Heaven. I wasn't frustrated with it. I was just bored. Okay, so for different reasons, they're different movies. But yes, I see your comparison, and it's valid. I get it. I am on 2 ends of the spectrum right now.
Autism.
But no, I'm not. But in that same sense, like, stop. I don't know. I can't put on a piece of paper like these are the 7 things I like in movies. Like I just wasn't.
Shorter list.
I just wasn't entertained with this. By the end of it, I was pissed. I was mad. And for what value? 2 characters that I don't give a crap about. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's why I didn't like this movie. And all the other characters that brought some value. The prostitute that was in 2 scenes. Lindsay and I both enjoyed her because she was the one that was speaking the most truth and the most just like non BS.
Yeah.
Like she was in 2 scenes. Mel, yeah, and there were some other more characters barely in it. The mom was barely in it. Like,
how about that lady, the old lady who
the 2 ladies
when she found out that her husband had been at the prostitutes, asked her
wanted details about the decor inside. Yeah.
So like, I don't know how to answer your question.
Mrs. Dr. Mead.
Like what I want in movies. All I know is like by the end of it, am I entertained? I'm not watching a documentary. I'm not watching something for educational purposes. This movie did not entertain me. This movie made me mad, and I didn't like it. And that's what came down to. Now, we've talked about my rating system before. I tried to rate broader because the scale is broad. It's like if it was a yes or no scale, then this would have been a no.
Yeah.
But it's out of 10 stars. And I'm not going to give anything a 1 because it's a movie that exists, and I'm different from watching it. Whether I'm good or bad from watching it, I'm different from watching it. And so cinematically, there were some cool shots in it. There were some cool shots. Some of the shots of like the scene where they pan the streets.
Yeah.
And like there were moments in it where I'm like, okay, wow, that's a perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's a glimpse. Like there were things in it. Like I enjoyed aspects of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, out of 10 stars, it wasn't a 0 because there were parts in it that I enjoyed. But out of 10, it was a 5 because it's on the bottom half of the list. But it's not the lowest because I do have to. It's not the lowest of the low, but it's at the top of the low.
Right. And the lowest of the low starts at 4.5.
Currently, I am broadening it, but like I haven't.
I don't even know if that's accurate.
3.
I'm not.
So
I have no intention.
4 stars right now. Is
I have no intention to convince you that this movie is good or that you do in fact like it.
And you can't.
Right.
No one can.
Right. Yeah. That's not my point.
Right. And I'm not asking
means.
anyone to.
My point is more of like, what is my point? I'm confused by what it is that you think is a lack of growth because I see growth in the characters. I'm confused when you say there's nothing to be. I don't remember what your exact words were, but it was like there's nothing of value or there's nothing to be taken or anything like that because that's not true either. Because you said in your own words that you're different for it or that it made you angry. That's something, right? So I'm just a little bit bewildered and befuddled by
the broad statements that I'm declaring.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that. Like I can't experience something whether it's a handshake or a 4-hour movie and not have it be a part of me now.
Yeah, all handshakes are at least 5 out of 10 stars.
Right, especially, I'm not going to say his name. They're a part of who I am.
Yeah.
It's like this movie had an impact on me, but it's not an impact that I find valuable. It's not something I'm going to be like 10 years from now going, oh yeah, I'm different now because of this movie. Like this movie didn't add value to my life. So I guess that's my perspective. Like I'm leaving this movie frustrated, not because I've changed my perspective on something, but because this movie just pissed me off. Like, and none of these characters are likable. None of the main characters are likable.
Would you agree
with the most
that
dialogue?
The 2 main characters are intended to upset you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, if they successfully do that, that the movie has been successful in one of the things it set out to do.
Right. And maybe that's one of the things I don't like about movies. I don't like movies that are just intentionally seeking out to piss people off.
That's
So-
why
so
I don't
maybe
like.
you're- right.
That's why I don't like The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
I've not watched
Yeah,
that movie
because
yet.
striped pajamas are stupid and nobody should like
Polka
them.
dots
No,
all
it's
the way.
just a movie that starts out sad and just gets sadder
Like,
we
until
are-
the end when it's the saddest.
We're 7 hours into this.
We're
episode.
running out of time.
Yeah.
We need to get into rapid questions. Jeff, do you have some final thoughts on on this topic before we get into rapid questions? I want to give you the last word.
No, I appreciate the pushback. Like I get that. Like I've said before, like I have a hard time formulating us into all I know is like this movie didn't captivate me. It didn't. It made me mad, and that was it.
Yeah.
I spent 4 hours, now 8 hours of my life trying to watch this movie, trying to understand it, and all I know is she's an idiot. She's a narcissist.
Yes, she
she is by all 9 points of a Google definition of narcissist. She's a narcissist at the beginning,
According to Google.
at the beginning, and at the end.
Okay.
So maybe she went through growth moments, but she's the same purpose person at the end.
Okay.
But like so
Push back on that a little bit.
Okay. Like
Jeff,
she's a narcissist.
are you
and she's a
still
narcissist.
Jeff Reddick? Were you Jeff Reddick in high school?
Right.
Are a lot of the same characteristic traits, things that you didn't like about yourself in high school, still things that you struggle with today, even if you've had growth in them?
Okay, so we're not talking about just specifically my name. We're talking about
Yeah.
Okay, I was confused because yes, I am Jeff Reddick.
Not
through
just
all-
the-
I am Jeff Reddick
no,
through all
I'm
that.
not
but
doing the shit-
I have drastically changed.
I'm not doing,
even though my name's the same.
I'm not doing the ship of Theseus question.
Okay,
But I mean, like a lot of the things that I struggled with in high school are still character traits about me today that are still things that I struggle with because this is who I am.
right.
There are I don't think I'm a narcissist. I haven't looked at the things, but
I have them right here.
There
This
are-
is part of some of Lindsay's notes that she had.
there
Yeah.
are aspects of me that I think a lot of people would say that's narcissistic. That I was probably more narcissistic in high school than I am now. I've worked on these things. Or arrogance. Jen's pointed out lovingly in the past where I've been overly arrogant or cocksure. I don't think still struggling with those things is a lack of growth. Some people grow at different rates. A narcissist who's a narcissist at 16 is probably still going to be a narcissist at 30.
It's only been 12 years.
Right. And it,
So a narcissist at 16, probably still a narcissist at what, 28? Hopefully they've learned some lessons.
right.
And I think she had.
And if there was a part 2, Gone with the Wind part 2, another 12-hour movie that we finally see her overcoming, like,
I think there is a sequel.
to the book or to the movie or to both.
I'm looking it up.
Okay, but just yes to all. Like yes, the things in our life do change. But like
Every time I Google Gone with the Wind, I get weather reports.
so I think like I didn't
Following the publication of her novel, Margaret Mitchell was inundated with requests for a sequel, but she claimed not to have a notion of what happened to Scarlet and Red. And as a result, she had, quote, left them to their ultimate fate. Until her death in 1949, Mitchell continued to resist pressure from Selznick and MGM to write a sequel. In 1975, her brother, Stevens Mitchell, who assumed control of her estate, authorized a sequel that would be jointly produced by MGM and Universal Studios on a budget of $12 million. Anne Edwards was commissioned to write the sequel as a novel, which would then be adapted into a screenplay and published in conjunction with the film's release. Edwards submitted a 775-page manuscript, which was titled Tara, the Continuation of Gone with the Wind, set between 1872 and 1882, and focusing on Scarlett's divorce from Rhett. MGM was not satisfied with the story, and the deal collapsed. The idea was revived in the 1990s when a sequel was finally produced in 1994 in the form of a television miniseries, Scarlet. Scarlet was based on the novel by Alexandra Ripley, itself a sequel to Mitchell's book. British actors Joanne Whaley and Timothy Dalton were cast as Scarlet and Rhett, and the series follows Scarlett's relocation to Ireland after she again becomes pregnant by Rhett. Linked below where you can watch Scarlet.
intrigued. Yeah, this movie evoked emotions for me, many emotions, and I think maybe one of the linchpins was when you don't see her once hold her daughter.
Yes,
They-
that's not true. She hugs her when they come back from London.
That's right, on the steps. That's right. Okay, yeah.
And then the daughter says, "Where's my pony?"
Right. So like I think that era of the movie,
She's not a physically affectionate person.
no, but she's also not a it just like that was hard to watch, and that was a very like I didn't like you before
I
you
never
had a
hold
baby
my
with
children.
Bonnie.
I never hold my children.
Oh, you should try it. It's fun.
I just made him so uncomfortable.
But like, I think that was the linchpin of like, okay, a narcissist that has growth, yes, I can get into that. But like, just like, I think that was the nail in the coffin. Like, I don't like, she doesn't need a happy ending. Like she's
Right, and she's not supposed to have one, which is why she doesn't get one.
right. But again, at the end of the movie, I felt dead inside. Like, and so for me, that wasn't a great valuable movie.
You should try
because-
Jesus.
You know what I mean? Like,
Or
Do
good,
I?
or
Like-
good fun.
like this movie didn't my goal as far as something I'm going to watch and be entertained with.
I think it'd be quite some time before I watch it again, mostly because of the length. But I did actually quite enjoy a lot of the themes and message in the movie.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned of how not to do things by the two main characters and how to do things by characters.
I think pretty obvious lessons. If you like.
No, I think a lot of these things are things that people genuinely get wrong regularly.
I didn't say people get it wrong. I just say they're obvious.
I really, it surprised me how engaging it was for me.
I'm envious of your guys' perspective in this film.
I watched it as the first time I watched it as I need something to do right now. Like I need some background
Here's
noise
4 hours
to
to
You're
film it.
desperate.
Yeah, I was. I need it is easier for
And
me
then she
to
started watching
accomplish.
SVU after that.
Dun,
It's
dun.
easier for me to accomplish tasks if I am being engaged mentally.
We got some wrap-up questions,
Terrific.
and then we will be gone with the wind. Would you guys recommend this film? No. You guys, what about you?
I think I would, but it would come with the conversation of this is a 4-hour movie. Probably watch it in 2 parts.
I learned a lot about what American culture was like back then, and I think that was valuable to me, and I think that it satiated a lot of curiosity that I had, and so I would recommend it.
We'll eventually get to The Help, which also talks about slightly more modern Southern socialist.
When does that?
Socialite?
When is this? What is the setting of that movie?
The Help, I believe,
in the
is
50s?
Civil War, civil rights movement era.
Okay, MLK days.
Yeah, I believe. I saw it
Yeah.
when it first came out, but it's been a while.
I've not seen.
Yeah,
that one.
it's
1960s, early
I think it's-
1960s, Jackson,
Yeah.
Mississippi.
But it also takes a look at the the what's the term that they use within their own community, the society, quote unquote.
Okay.
So Southern society types.
Okay, you know, I'm eager to watch that too. I know that when that movie came out, and it was a book before. I know it was people were chatting about it. So I'm not familiar with it outside the concept of what The Help is. Like I know.
I know I know people who are in like Facebook groups of women who are looking for help like in Guatemala because the person that they had stole from them or stuff like that, and it's very reminiscent of that movie.
Okay. This movie passed. Would you guys change the rating, or what would it be rated today? Modern rating.
I think today you could rate this PG. I think
Yeah.
this movie does a remarkable job of using easily discernible for adult coded language.
Right.
That if you're a kid, like it would go right over your head.
Yeah.
I think they do an incredible job with that.
Yeah.
As Roger Ebert pointed out with you need someone that's kissed you like they know how or something like that, and he's like that word can mean exactly what you think it means.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's one graphic scene when she shoots the Yankee in the face.
No, yeah,
Like now, granted, it's not graphic to modern standards,
Yeah.
but like there is blood, there is like.
and the dead Confederates on the street. There's some dismembering. It's
Was it
painted?
Was that up close?
It's paint like it's not real
Okay.
bodies,
Right, but like it was okay. Like
it's enough to.
was it in the forefront of the screen? Because like it pans pretty quick. I was just trying to
it's a mix.
Yeah, it's like there is warfare. There is,
So I think you could get away with
but
PG still.
yeah, and when they amputate the leg, the implied amputation, like it's all off screen, but you
Yeah.
hear screaming and stuff. So there's some graphic intentions, but I think it's done in a way where it's like it's safe.
Yeah.
PG. Yeah, that's PG. So, any thoughts on that?
No thoughts.
If you did watch it with kids, you'd have to have a conversation about the word Negro, which appears in it a few times.
Yes, in the concept of 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long movie for a kid
Yeah,
to watch.
don't watch it with kids. The kids aren't going to enjoy it.
There's no.
Can you imagine trying to watch it with our kids?
Has it aged well? 1939.
I think it's aged incredibly well. We sometimes have that conversation of did it age well because it's a time capsule or because it's a period piece. In this case, it's both. But I think it's aged very well.
For the points they were trying to put across. Yes,
I think that it's aged well in the sense that even though it's super overacted, it's still engaging.
Yeah.
And I know you don't agree.
No,
That's okay.
I do agree. I don't think the acting was great, and my only pushback is like it's aged well, but like if people are running to this movie to watch it for academic reasons, like I want to know what it was like to be a Southern slave owner, and if like
Yeah, if you want, if that's what you're
this is
looking
not for historic accuracy.
That's right. If that's what
Like,
you're looking for, you should watch Django Unchained.
There's little bit of glimpses of nuances of like things like, and maybe this specific situation was close to a certain family, but there was no family that were like living the exact like. This is
I
not
don't
historically
think most
accurate
people
100%.
Go to a movie.
Well, right. Most people know. But there are people that are like, oh, I know what it was like to be in the South. Like I watched,
I
like
know.
some
But,
people
like,
would
if
hold
that's
on
our
to
dis-
this
If
as
that's our disclaimer, then like that's the majority of the movies we
Right,
cover, right?
right. No,
like if you want to understand what violent youth in the 70s was like, I don't think you should watch Clockwork Orange.
no, I think that's incredibly accurate.
Right? Like I think that pretty well applies to a lot of what we
Right. But I know like the fact that it's an older movie, a lot of people just assume like, oh, this is a glimpse into the past.
Right.
Yes and no.
Right.
Like-
It's a romanticized version of what one family may have experienced.
Yes, correct.
Or some families may have
So
experienced.
I like this. I like the feel of the movie. I do like the age and the setting of it. It does feel like you're watching a classic movie.
Yeah.
Like, and I like this. The sound quality is good. Like the
This
big,
was one of the
Yeah.
very first color
there's
pictures as
some
well.
iconic scenes in it that are very visually stunning. So like I like the aging of it and stuff.
Yeah.
Would this be in your guys' personal top 250?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
Absolutely, it'd be mine. It's like top
If it
five.
is, it's like towards the bottom. I liked it. It'll probably be several years before I watch it again, and that's almost exclusively just because of the length.
I hope to never. watch this.
Um,
This would not.
If
be
I
my
had
top
chosen a movie that was in my top 250, we would have done Newsies. But
or
Alas.
Paddington 2,
Or
which I think Paddington 2 used to be in the top.
I think
250.
somebody should nominate it for an off
Paddington
250.
2 is already nominated.
Is it?
for Off 250.
I believe it is.
Nice. I vote yes on
Newsies
that.
is not yet, but maybe someone will nominate it. Someone.
Maybe someone
Well,
could
if you-
submit that on that form that's available to
If you
all our
do
Patreon.
Newsies, have me because I know a lot of Newsies trivia.
I feel like this last one's going to be easy for us all to answer.
Yeah.
Just because we've kind of dissected this a lot. Why do you think this film is on the top 250?
I think it's iconic. I think it's classic. I think it handles topics in a way that I've really not seen done in movies. Having your main character be a really thoroughly unlikable woman that is sexually liberated and like kind of glorifying sexual liberation in a way that like makes you dislike her. I think that's something that you really don't see a whole lot in movies. I think that this movie does a lot of things that a lot of other movies don't even dare to try.
Especially for the 1930s.
Yes.
I mean, even now.
Yeah.
But especially for the 1930s.
Yeah.
I think cinematically, this movie was innovative.
Yep.
I think they took a lot of chances. Some of them paid out. This movie could have been 2 hours shorter. Like,
Yeah,
they're like,
I think with
but, like,
modern film sensibility, you could make the same quality movie, do all the same stuff in half the time.
Lindsay and I watched this in 1 hour increments over 4 days.
Yeah.
This movie would work great as a miniseries.
Oh yeah.
This book
Yeah.
would work great as maybe an eight episode movie, an 8 episode miniseries.
Yeah.
Like
Draw
it's like-
it out even further.
right, because
I
like
just tease it.
there's some things that could have used more depth.
Sure.
Maybe go more into the slavery lifestyle.
Yeah.
that
bring,
these
bring back the
slave
KKK
owners have.
scene
Like,
that they had to
right,
scene
like
that they had to
like
cut.
there could be like I feel like you could add more to this that would make it more likable to someone that's like me. Like
Yeah.
but the specifically like there's a lot of things in this movie that was ahead of its time and I think still holds up to when people go and study film.
Yeah.
That's kept it pretty top notch.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's on the top 250?
Also, I gotta say, the leading lady, what's her name?
Scarlett
Clark Gable.
O'Hara.
I know it's Scarlett O'Hara, but the actress, that one eyebrow she
Scarlett
has,
Johansson.
like she communicates so much with that eyebrow. Like a lot of this movie is overacted, but I think that she was a terrific casting. I think
Vivian
Hattie,
Lee.
yes, Vivian Lee. I think Hattie, who played Mammy, was. I think she was a really great character, really well acted, not overacted.
She won an award for this
She
movie.
won an award for it. I think Clark Gable was overacted in a lot of places. I think Melanie, that character, was fantastic as well. Just I loved. We didn't have time to get into this, but I just wanted to, like, I loved the way that she refused gossip. Like in times where people were telling her things that she knew she shouldn't be hearing, and she told them, "You shouldn't be telling me this." I thought she was incredible, and the way she received Scarlett at that party, even though that she had heard like a pretty awful rumors about her and her husband. I think that she is a real model of virtue in this movie. That
I loved her interaction with Belle.
Yeah.
I thought that was like, if you want to know what a classy person is, that's a classy person.
Yeah.
A person that can be the exact same with every single person.
Yeah. Anything else?
Jen, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate this. We hopefully it's not the last time. Well, I hope it's not the last time. I can't speak for your husband.
I don't think he wants me back.
No, this was great. It was great to have your perspective. Great to have your voice on here. We offer this to other guests. We're going to throw it to you, but we'll give you do you have any famous last words, final things you want to say? Do you have anything you'd like to plug? Anything you'd like to point people to if there's anyone that would like to reach out to you? Like again, they don't have to, but just give you an opportunity to guide people towards something that you would prefer.
I don't have any.
I'd like to say something on her behalf that I know that she actually does want to say, which is
Her rolls, like her bread rolls that she makes. The bread you make?
Yeah, she makes excellent.
Oh
she
my
makes incredible
gosh.
bread.
I'm
but
not
no, that's
gonna.
not it.
I'm not gonna make bread.
No, like if you can't get it, you're missing out. Like I just have
No,
to say.
here's what I was going
Jen,
to say, which is
life-changing.
something that my wife tells mostly other mothers regularly. Homeschooling is far more accessible than people think it is, and that if you think that because of your situation you can't homeschool, my wife will help you look at options that might open that up for you if it's something that you want to do. A lot of times we find when we talk about how we homeschool, one of the first responses we get from people is a somewhat kind of guilty list of reasons why they can't.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that everybody has to homeschool. It is my personal belief that homeschooling is the ideal. I understand that ideals and reals are different, but if you feel that you'd like to homeschool, but because of your situation you can't, reach out to me. I can get you in touch with Jen, and she can help you navigate that.
Right on.
Yeah, and it is something that you definitely need to sit down and consider for sure.
For sure.
For sure.
What's next week? Oh wait,
I
did
feel
you have
like
more to
Jen's
say?
got
Huh?
more.
Yeah, you plugged for me, but I didn't plug for
Well, you
me.
had said nothing.
I was in the. I stood.
No, I'm pretty
Guys,
sure that you were done.
In the 7 hours we've been recording, we've kept from bickering. Let's not lose it.
Pretty sure that pretty well covers everything that Jen had to say. So
Turn her mic off. No. What was that, Jen?
I think that there are several movies that you guys have covered that have like a cultural component to them, and as a Latina woman, as a Latinx,
Can Latina people say it without doing the accent? Like you've talked this whole episode without like that inflection on
No,
the
she
verb,
can't.
and all of a sudden
But
like
the
it
thing
comes
is-
out as Latina. Like
you can hear her order at a Mexican restaurant.
Like it's
It's a
just
word
funny
in
how it
Spanish.
comes out. I know, but like Latina,
why would I say it in an English accent if it's in
Because
Spanish?
you're speaking English.
Latina. You're like code switching.
It's the same reason like
fascinating.
when an Italian person's like, and yesterday I had some spaghetti.
Spaghetti. Yeah. I
Para
was like,
ustedes que son Latinos.
right. Like, that makes sense, but Latina is also an English word. You can say I
No, it's Latinx
I
in
love it
English.
that you
¿Sabes
said
qué?
that. I love that
Tal
you
vez
said it.
It's
solo lo
Latinx
digo en
in English.
español.
I find it fascinating. Like some people would just like they immediately code switch to like
So I do translating pretty regularly,
Mhm, mhm.
and I call people to like make appointments for them, and I consider like anglicizing people's names, and I think it's rude.
Names and words are different.
yeah, names are words.
As a
names are not words.
Latina woman,
Nailed it.
That's a great West Southern cowboy. Latina, like
As a-
As
Well,
a-
no, I,
as
I
a
As
love-
a
Latina-
Latina senorita.
no. Yeah, no.
if you have any desire to connect with the Latin population where you live, I would highly recommend you read a book called Foreign to Familiar, because the biggest misunderstanding isn't language, it's culture, and that's my opinion. Read that book and
Linked
get
below.
to know the Latinos around you.
She did it again.
Eat some
It's actually
pupusas
about
and taquitos.
it's about cross-cultural
Tamales.
communication and far more than just American Latin. It also can help Americans understand Canadians and English and Iranians and all sorts of cultures better.
You might actually enjoy Children of Heaven if you read the book.
Yeah, if you just read a book, Jeff.
I don't want to do
Jeez.
that. Lame. Next week,
Next week.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We chose
Which
this movie.
Spider-Man?
Well, I'm getting there.
Oh.
We chose this movie because
there.
Madam Web is coming out.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to do that. So we're doing our first Marvel movie.
That's right.
Spider-Man No Way Home.
That's right.
There's currently 3 Spider-Man movies on the top 250.
Is this our first superhero movie?
I
I think it is.
Do 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 do
Schindler, was he a superhero?
do do
I think so.
do 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 do.
Look out. Here comes the Spider-Man.
This is our first superhero movie.
Neat.
Specifically MCU, but if any, but because Batman's on here too and stuff.
So
So yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home. This is the third of the Spider-Man trilogy that's in the MCU.
Oh, okay.
So it's the one
This
with
is the one in Italy?
the big. No, that's the second one. This is the one with the other 2
That's the
Spider-Mans.
Italian job.
Oh, this is Spider-Man's.
This is where Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield.
That's
so,
a fun one.
So yeah, we're doing that because next week Madam Web comes out.
Yeah.
So join us next week for Spider-Man No Way Home.
Is that movie at least a year old already?
No Way Home, absolutely. Yeah.
Huh. Time flies when you're having fun.
We've had this year in 2023 we had the second Spider-Verse movie,
Yeah.
and then we've also had the Doctor Strange. Like we've had many movies since this one,
Right.
So-
But it's I didn't ask how many have we had since.
right? But
it's
like
out.
not all movies came out in not all these movies came out in the last 12 months.
Yeah, but like they release like 4 movies a year. It seems like.
Right.
What year did that movie come out? What year did No Way Home come out? Yeah, we're Speeding if we're slowing.
I loved how annoyed
2021.
with singing.
Wow.
Spider-Man No Way Home 2021.
Feels like it was last year. All right. Well, see you in a week for Spider-Man.
One more thing. Nelson, I love you very much. It's been 11 years that I've loved, and let's keep doing it.
I was wondering if you were going to read anything
I'm
from
going to
the
have to
script today.
cut
Jen.
all that out.
This whole time, Jen's been off the script. Now she chooses to read the script we set for her.
We sent you a script ahead of time.
Yeah.
I love you too, Jen. And it's uncomfortable
Why
for me
did
to
that
say
sound
that.
sarcastic?
Because it's uncomfortable for me to say that in front of people.
He's not an
as you,
affectionate
like,
person.
put me on the spot to say it on my podcast.
Jen, I love you in a different way, but I'm glad you're here and I'm glad we know each other. Thank you
And
for being
Lindsay, we know you're listening. I love you.
here. No, Lindsay is not listening to this. I don't know how.
All right, we'll be back next week.
See you. Yep. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did.
If you have found value in what we discussed today, please consider leaving us a rating and review. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
If you have any feedback or suggestions, we would love to hear from you.
That's right, tell us why we're wrong.
If you want even more content and ways to engage with us and each other, check out our Patreon page.
By supporting us there, you'll get access to exclusive bonus content and help us continue to create high-quality episodes, as well as help pay for our future plans. Links to our social media, merchandise, and Patreon are in the show notes.